Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It is great to be back with you again for another episode of On the Move, the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. My name is Mac Worley III. This is On the Move. I'm pretty excited about today's show. First of all, it's been 2 weeks since I've had an opportunity to talk with you all, so I'm quite excited about this opportunity. Again, I love talking to you guys. Most importantly, the most important reason why I like to do this show is to talk with you guys and to have you guys call in or message us on Facebook. The number to the show, by the way, if you want to join today's conversation, is 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can get us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. I love it when you guys participate in the conversation. But we got a whole slew of things that are on the docket for today, things that I want to talk about. And first and foremost, at 6:15 p.m., actually 5:15 p.m., Pacific Standard Time, that's 8:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be joined by a special guest. He's going to talk about some new information he has on why the federal government has been hating on ranchers and why they're giving them so much trouble. So I'm really excited to have him on. This relates to the Bundy case and the situation out in Oregon with the federal standoff with the FBI and the occupiers. So if you're interested in that story, then you'll be interested in this information. In addition, I want to move to another topic after that. I want to talk about the election here. There's been some things that have happened since I last spoke with you all. And one of those, Ted Cruz, has been slandered by the National Enquirer. I want to talk about this so-called scandal that they have released. Again, the ever-reputable National Enquirer, the ones that report about Elvis still being alive and a space alien. That's the publication that we're using here that broke this wonderful story, this amazing expose. So we're going to break down this story and find out exactly if there's any meat or evidence to this accusation that Ted Cruz is involved in a sex scandal with 5 mistresses and what have you. So we're going to talk about that for a little bit and also mention the new trending hashtags, hashtag Trump loves pecker and hashtag Trump pays for wiener. We're going to explain what that's about. It might not be what you think it is. But anyway, then I want to talk about something that kind of got Donald Trump into some hot water this week, and I want to kind of noodle this out with you all. And it's Trump's position, or I suppose we can say positions, on abortion. He's had a few of them this week, and they all seem to be, I don't want to call the guy a flip-flopper, but I guess if the shoe fits, he's been flip-flopping around on the issue of abortion. So we're going to talk about that and his recommendation, and then his changing of his opinion on punishment for women who have abortions. So then from there, I've been having a lot of conversations with people who say, Donald Trump, he's terrible. I don't like him, but if it's between him and Hillary, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump because I cannot vote Hillary. And I feel like, first of all, that's leaving a very important third option off the table, which the third option is the third party. But in addition, I want to actually break down, is Donald Trump actually better than Hillary Clinton? We're going to talk about that, specifically pertaining to the economy. If you all are free market conservatives or libertarians, you all should believe, I would imagine, in free trade. So we're going to talk about how Donald Trump would do on the economy, and then also have some corollary issues as far as what he would do to the Republican Party. What would happen after Donald Trump? Let's not think about the short term. Let's look ahead at the long term and see what would happen. We talk about that swinging pendulum all the time, so we're going to get into that. Then I want to talk about specifically here, I think this is really important. Why shouldn't we get caught up in pro-Trump or anti-Trump movements. I think both of them are not something that you want to be affiliated with, and I'm going to talk about why. Also, there's been a petition going around. It's got 25,000 signatures to allow firearms in the Republican National Convention. The venue that they have has a no weapons policy, and a lot of people are very concerned about this, and they've signed a petition about it. So we're going to talk about that. Also, if we have time, I want to get into what is nationalism, what is fascism, because there's been a lot of talk about that recently with Donald Trump running in the race here. A lot of people have been levying accusations that he's a fascist and a nationalist, and we're gonna talk about that. So before we go to a commercial break here, I want to actually cover something that I find particularly important, especially considering that I've been calling this. This is a really exciting bit of news that I'm going to give you guys here. A new poll and a big endorsement has increased Ted Cruz's Wisconsin momentum. You may be familiar with my prediction last 2 weeks, and actually for the last few months, saying that, Donald Trump, he's gaining a lot of momentum. That's true, but I think that he has reached his ceiling on how many people he's going to get. He's a very divisive candidate. And being a divisive candidate, being that 65% of his own party is anti-Trump, and let's weed that down. Let's say even half of those people aren't necessarily never Trump, but they would vote for him if it came down to him or Hillary. Okay? So that leaves 30% of your own party that is completely ostracized from your candidate. It's a bad idea. I've been saying this for a long time, that you can't win. First of all, you cannot win as a party, if you move away from your party principles. What does your party stand for? If you're talking about the Democrats, they free crap. Free crap. As long as you're for free crap or entitlement programs, you're not going to cut any of that down. Then you're good. But as far as for the Republican Party goes, this is the party of small government. At least that's what it was supposed to be. That's what we claim it to be. So in terms of what we're doing as a party, we're putting up more and more progressive candidates. And what we have with Donald Trump, I feel like I've articulated in the past few episodes how progressive Donald Trump is. I feel like it's, at this point, if you are choosing to vote for or support for Donald Trump, you have decided to put the party above the principles. And then at that point, what difference, to take some words from Hillary Clinton, what difference does it make at this point? What are we fighting for? Why even bother going through the motions if we're just going to continue to put up these progressive candidates? So with the big news here, what is so important that, again, I told you this was going to happen because Donald Trump hit that ceiling, and he snatched up all the angry people that he could. No offense to the Donald Trump supporters, but I feel like that's a big chunk of his audience there. People who are tired of political correctness. If you're a white male Christian, you're tired of being the only demographic that can legally be discriminated against. You're just fed up, and I get it. I understand the anger behind that. But there's only so many people. I had a great conversation with Dan Sandini of the Daylight Disinfectant last week. Dan was saying that, we're going to pick up so many, all these different people, because he thinks that, Donald Trump is going to pick up the disenfranchised Bernie Sanders supporters, which I think that's a little far-fetched, considering these guys absolutely hate billionaires. And these are the same people, the Bernie Sanders supporters are the same people that are out there putting themselves in main thoroughfares in Arizona, shutting down highways so people can't get to these Donald Trump rallies. So I find it a little bit crazy that you're going to expand the tent by bringing in Democrats, by putting up a progressive candidate, because we have to be more marketable. We can't actually put forth our own ideas. We have to make ourselves Democrat light. Give them some of what they want. Give the liberals some of what they want. Well, look, I happen to not be interested in trying to give the liberals what they want. I want to convince them that my ideas, that our conservative or libertarian ideas are better. We have the better ideas. And it's high time, I think, that we put up a candidate that will actually show those ideas. So, again, I'm not here to tell you that I told you so, but Ted Cruz is gaining momentum in Wisconsin.
I told you so. Oh, I told you so.
And we have evidence from this, from the poll that recently came out here. So Ted Cruz is now, according to this poll, Ted Cruz is up by about 10 or so points from Donald Trump. The last time this was polled in Wisconsin was he was down. And one of the things I actually want to do a little later in this episode is to actually go through some of the delegates, if we have some time, and show how Rubio in the race actually has altered the delegate count pretty significantly. And we can go through, and again, I'm not very great at math, you all know that by now, but we'll add up the delegate counts on each side and add what would have gone to, because I think it's pretty arguable that if you were a Rubio supporter and you voted for Rubio in the primary, that if Rubio wasn't in the race, you very likely would have went to, I don't know, say Ted Cruz, maybe? You think that would be something that you would do? I think so. I think they're ideologically consistent as far as a lot of conservative principles. There are some differences. The things I don't like about Marco Rubio, I like about Ted Cruz. For example, I've talked to you many times about Marco Rubio's position on the Patriot Act, all the spying on American, bulk spying on Americans without warrants, or using what could essentially be called a general warrant. But again, if you liked Rubio, you could probably see yourself voting for Cruz. So I want to take these numbers and move them over and see how the delegate counts would be different without Rubio in the race. And now, again, as I was trying to explain to Dan Sandini 2 weeks ago, I think that now that Rubio's out of the race, I think that we're going to see a huge surge going to Ted Cruz. Now, I'm not necessarily saying he's going to win outright in the delegate count, but I think he has a really, really good shot here of pulling ahead in the delegate count before the convention, and at least making a good run of this. So what's happened with Wisconsin is it's going to take the momentum. If Ted Cruz pulls away, which it looks like it is, this looks like what's going to happen. Ted Cruz is going to pull away with the victory in Wisconsin. If that happens, we're in kind of a primary slowdown right now, and Ted Cruz is currently building more and more momentum for the primaries that will follow. And again, as we start moving into some of these blue states, some of these Democrat states where Donald Trump does particularly well, and especially in these open primaries where the liberals can come in and vote for him, do Operation Chaos, and basically cross the party lines and vote in Republican primaries, even though they're registered Democrats. I don't think that's going to hurt Ted Cruz with Kasich being in. I don't think Kasich's presence will hurt Ted Cruz as much as it will hurt Donald Trump, because first of all, Donald Trump does better in open primaries. He does better in more blue states, but so does John Kasich. And I think what we're going to see is an ideological divide. Are you a progressive or are you a conservative? And in these states, I think you're going to see conservative voters moving towards Ted Cruz and progressive voters being split between Donald Trump and John Kasich, and I think that's only going to help Ted Cruz. So anyway, that's my prediction, but we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by our guest, and you guys aren't going to want to miss this. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
Alrighty, gang, we are back, and at this point we are going to be joined by our special guest. His name is Lazaro Esenaro. Hey, Lazaro, are you there? Lazaro.
Hello, absolutely.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Good. Good afternoon.
Alrighty. So, first of all, go ahead and explain to our audience just briefly what you're actually talking about today, and then we'll get into the minutia, get into the dirty details as far as why they should care about what information you have.
Unfortunately, this affects every American person that is an American citizen. Through taxation, these people are profiting on land grabbing and satellites that they're using in the stratosphere to pick up these minerals.
And by these people, you're referring to the federal government or the people inside the federal government, right?
For both. Let's say the department with regards to the BLM, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Department of U.S. and Forestry, and their co-conspirators from George Soros to Harry Reid to Hillary Clinton to Jeff Merkley, Ben Cliff. All this revolves around taxpayers' money, and at the end of the day, is we work 40 hours a week and plus overtime. It doesn't matter if you're a mother and you're a father or you're a teenager. You are getting hit with taxes, and follow where your taxes money is going. And then I'll ask you: is when was the last time your politician went ahead in front of the Senate or Congress, or even your president, and said, you know what, I'm going to reduce taxes for the American people? And by the time I get done, your answer should be answered.
Okay, so let's begin here. Let's start at the beginning of as far as the information that you have. I understand that you were talking about satellites and geological information. So why? Let's just boil this down to one question here. Why does the federal government treat ranchers so badly? Why are they pushing them off land and continuing to encroach on them in ways that we historically haven't seen?
Because they're sitting in a gold mine. When you have gold and uranium and copper, especially uranium, which is used to create bombs, and then you have gold, which is also part of the United States Security and Exchange Commission and Wall Street and Main Street, where they go ahead and use these all these minerals, and the United States Security and Exchange Commission, they profit off of this. So when you have the BLM going ahead and unconstitutionally stealing people's land for the minerals, they have no constitutional right to do so under Article 6, Section 2, Clause 2, and also under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And then at the same time violate people's due process, meaning you want to go to court and you can't get your own fair hearing because even the judges have money at stake at this, either regards to land or funds, meaning mutual funds through, let's say, Washington Mutual or J.P. Morgan or Merrill Lynch. So this all ties all in the scope of things of money.
Okay, so you mentioned something to me before when we were on the phone off the air about judges having actually a monetary financial gain in taking farmers' lands or siding with the federal government, things along those lines. Can you go into a little bit of detail on that?
Absolutely. Right now we have Anna J. Brown. She is a federal judge And under Federal Rule 28, Chapter 28 of federal law, she should be recusing herself for the following reasons. Number one, she's practicing off the bench. While practicing off the bench, helping the prosecutor prosecute these individuals. Number two is she purchased land from the BLM in Montana. So now she has favors to do for the BLM. Meaning, if you give me something, I'm going to give you something, well, I'm going to have to do a favor for you. On top of it, she patented her land. So how many American citizens are able or have the ability to patent their land like she did in other individuals? Didn't our founding fathers stated about title of nobility? And I challenge anybody to read Article 9 and Article 10 in the Organic 13th Amendment of 1819 on title of nobility. And then the next one, under 5 U.S. Code, where the judge gets an incentive of $5,000 every time she sides with the government. I didn't create this. This is what they created. So I challenge everybody to look up this information. This is crucial because if you, even if, let's say hypothetically, it's not the Bundys or the Hammonds or the Finnegans, imagine you going into a federal courtroom against the IRS, and you decide to say, you know what you did, it was unconstitutional, and you think you're having due process when you find out at the end of everything that comes out and you were found guilty that the judge received $5,000 under U.S. Code 5. How would you feel? What would you do?
I'd be pretty upset. You know, this sounds very familiar to me, though. This seems to be something that I've heard of in the past, particularly relating to child services, child protective services. They actually receive federal money for every child that they take away from their family. So therefore, they have a financial incentive to take away children from their family. And that's how we see in certain cases where some people get caught up in this system and there is no reason for them to be in it. But because there's money to be made, these people are turned into victims. It seems like this is the same circumstance, you know, especially if the judges themselves have skin in the game. So what can we do, particularly relating to that? Is there anything that we can do for a judge who won't recuse himself in this situation?
Absolutely. Well, number one, they're not acting. These judges are not acting under Article 6, Section 2, Clause 2, which is the United States Supreme Law of the land. They are operating under admiralty law, also known as the maritime or law of the sea or statutory law or commerce. They're not, let me clarify, they're not operating under the supreme law of the land. And I challenge everybody to look up the definition of admiralty on the Black Law Dictionary. And you'll distinguish between what admiralty states and what Article 6, Section 2, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution states by our founding fathers. But also start reading your Federalist Papers. Now, with respect to what you just stated, I mean, we know that these corrupt judges and prosecutors and foster care agencies are all involved in cahoots because at the end of the day, no different than the same people that are prosecuting the Bundys and the Patriots over there in Oregon are also the same ones that write the laws. So not that you write the laws, but now you go in front of the person that's in the judicial branch that also is going to preside on regards to the laws that they wrote. They're not even laws, they're statutory laws. Let me clarify that. They're statutory laws, guidelines, rules, regulations, and procedures. They are not laws. Under the United States Marbury versus Madison, anything that does not coincide with the Constitution is not a law. They're operating under statutory. So we got to understand and define and be clear between the Supreme Court of law and statutory. And all I ask is, if under admiralty they say they're operating under a maritime or the naval or the ocean, is Oregon in the ocean? And if it is in the ocean, then please show me. And if it is not in the ocean, then why are they practicing under that jurisdiction?
It's a good question. You know, I've had a lot of conversations, especially I have noticed, especially in like the sovereign citizen movement. I personally, I'm not a sovereign citizen. I don't consider myself that. I just am a fan of individual liberty and individualism and constitutionalism. So in terms of like talking about like maritime law and these kind of things, specifically looking at how we look at law as far as corporations and things like that, I've noticed that the sovereign citizen movement has discussed some of these kind of topics as well, like I forget what you said, admiral law or something like that. Is that what it was?
Admiralty, statutory, law of the sea, commercial law.
So how? Let me ask you this: how are the people who are actually intertwined into these issues that they're actually judging, the judges on the stage there? How are they not? How are they getting away with this? How are they not being forced to recuse themselves? How are they not being called out for their conflict of interest here?
Well, two things. I don't care if it's Oregon, Florida, New York, Washington, D.C., it doesn't matter, Texas and California. I challenge you to ask, not to ask, but demand a certified copy of the judge's oath of office and bond. They would tell you that you're delusional, or they'll tell you that you're crazy. But guess what? When you go into those unconstitutional courtrooms, you take you download, go to wherever your state you go, just Google oath of office and read their oath of office. Then challenge them to give you a certified copy of their oath of office with regards to that law that you printed out. And even you can go into federal law and look it up. There are laws that they demand to provide a certified copy of their oath of office. And I guarantee you, when you challenge them, they're gonna call you a kook. But guess what? Half of them, and I beg you, go to the Secretary of State, or go to the Secretary of Treasury, or go to the clerk's office or the county recorders, because that's where it's recorded. They will not have a certified copy of the oath and bond, meaning they're impersonating an officer and acting unconstitutional.
So earlier we were talking about an Oregon man who was sentenced to jail for collecting rainwater on his property. How does this tie into these mineral issues that we were talking about?
The same people that are behind the American Bar Association, they're the same ones that created what is called TRT, Technical Review Team. And the Technical Review Team, that part of the American Bar Association, created what's called ORS, Oregon Revision Statutes. And like I stated earlier, statutes is not a law. Statutes is admiralty law, which is not law of the land. And under these statutes, they created, which is patenting water, but getting permission to store water. It's God's water. Who in the hell within the government think that they can actually put a patent on water? Who can tell you when you cannot store water? Who in the world can tell you that you can and can't drink that water? Mm-hmm. That's you know what? We got that from God, our God creator. And if you don't believe in God, but guess what? That's the water that's coming from the sky, and it's coming down, and nobody should own that water. So who in the world does it give the government, who in the right mind will give the government permission to patent water? But on top of it, doesn't government work for us? We don't work for the government. So how in the world is the government telling us what to do, especially if it's unconstitutional?
And this is happening. Was this Oregon man? Was he sentenced? This is Oregon law, right? That's not federal law relating to that, right? That's
not the United States Constitution. No. Matter of fact, what they did is they defrauded this man. They committed fraud upon the court. And the judge was in cahoots with this. No different than the judges right now in cahoots that were with the Hammonds. Aiken. She was in cahoots because of who her brother-in-law was, which has ties with the BLM, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Department of the United States and Forestry Services. And on top of it, he's a prosecutor for the district attorney. So how in the world is any American citizen going to get any justice when these people are intertwined and have a huge conflict of interest and a monetary gain?
Yeah, I don't see a way out of that without getting some justice as far as for the people involved in the case. You have to have, arbiters involved, especially, in a court, especially the judge has to be somebody who's going to be fair, is not connected to the issue. That's why we have conflict of interest, and that's why they should recuse themselves. It's blowing me away that these people are so intertwined with the issues here, but yet they still seem to think that they're capable of remaining neutral on this, and obviously they're not. But particularly relating to this Oregon thing, the guy collecting rainwater, this was state level government, right? That wasn't federal level government, was it?
No, correct. But the people of the same city and state are involved. They're involved involved with regards to the Bar Association, TRT, and ORS, the Oregon Revision Statutory, which are all constitutional. And at the end of the day, who do you hold accountable? And guess what? They have immunity. So let's say hypothetically, what they did, they have immunity under their laws. But until we form a common law grand jury and start indicting these individuals for their criminal mischief and intent, they will continue to get away with what they're getting away with. If they can get away with the gentleman that got incarcerated for storing water, and now the Bundys and the Ammons for protecting their Hammonds with regard to their grazing rights, their water rights, their land, and their minerals, what makes you say that today, what's law today, what's statutory today, won't say tomorrow and won't apply to you in the future? Not just you, but what about our children, and what about our grandchildren?
Absolutely. It's starting to look more like we're no longer a nation of laws, but we are becoming a nation of men. It's a nation that people at the top, they're treated differently. They have a whole different set of rules, and we are actually the citizens here, as opposed to being the masters. Which, in terms of how our government was created, our government officials, they were supposed to be the public servants, and we were supposed to be the masters. But in this situation, the roles have reversed, and we are now the second-class citizens, and they are our masters, and they allow us to have whatever semblance of rights that they want, and it shifts in the wind, whatever favors them, or whatever they think they can get away with, and I absolutely agree with you on that. But hey, we actually have to cut to a commercial break. Would you mind holding over on the break so we can keep talking?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back after this message, gang. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, MacPack, we're back. Thanks for sticking with us through the break. By the way, I just want to give you guys a heads up. We've got 1 day left, 1 day only, to get one of our custom-made limited editions Be Libertarian t-shirts. It's at teechip.com/ B, Libertarian. That's B-E, Libertarian. Now, this design is original. It's made for you guys, and we're really excited about it. This shirt is really freaking cool. I like it a lot. So it's got the hallmark of what people who believe in free markets and self-ownership, some of the things that we absolutely believe in, and the core of that comes from the right to life, liberty, and property. And as Frederick Bastiat explained in his essay, The Law, since an individual cannot lawfully use force against the person, liberty, or property of another individual, then the common force, for the same reason, cannot lawfully be used to destroy the person, liberty, or property of individuals or groups. So if you agree with that, if you agree with free thinkers like Frederick Bastiat, Alexis de Tocqueville, Ludwig von Mises, and hell, even John Stossel, then this shirt's for you. Go to teechip.com. Again, that's teechip.com/be libertarian. And we're going to go ahead and have our guest, Lazaro. It was Lazaro Esenaro. Is that correct? Am I saying that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So, Lazaro, I think this actually fits right into what we were talking about, the right to life, liberty, and property. Property rights, I think, are the cornerstone of liberty. If you don't own anything, if you can't own property, then you essentially don't have any liberty whatsoever. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and that's what our founding father stated in Federalist Papers 84, which is Federalist Papers 84 gives us the Bill of Rights. And if we have all these co-conspirators, these thugs, taking anybody's property, and we allow it to happen, then what do you expect is what's going to happen to you when they come after your property? When do we stand up as Americans? When do we say it's enough is enough? When do we stand to this bully? When do we call them out? Where are we going to draw the line on the sand? As American people, these are the same people that are with two corporations under Uranium One and Calico Resource that were behind the assassination of Lavoie, using the FBI, the same FBI that fabricated evidence with the Department of Justice and DA against Senator Ted Stevens, is the same FBI that's going after our patriots for exposing how this uranium and the gold, the gold using in Wall Street, but the uranium is being sold to Russia. Not just the gold, but the land. And that uranium is going from Russia to Iran, and from Iran to ISIS. So how are we as Americans supposed to look at look at our military in the eye and say, thank you for protecting our freedom? Hallelujah, you guys are the best thing, when we are arming our enemies with uranium. It's U-308, look it up, which is called yellow cake. That's what's coming out of Harney County. That's what they're stealing out of Harney County, and that's why Hillary Clinton made that deal for $23 million with Uranium One, with the Russians. All you got to do is follow the money and follow her campaign contributions and the lobbyists. It's all written out there. It's everybody for America to see. What are we going to do as an American people? Are we going to allow this allow this criminal act to continue? Are we going to continue sacrificing our military on a code of freedom when we actually are arming our enemies? Are we going to allow George Soros, through his Media Matters and his donations to Barack Hussein Obama, Terry Reid, and Hillary Clinton, manipulate and distort the truth through the media? Or are we going to wake up and say we're going to stop and we're going to draw that line in the sand and say enough is enough?
So
where are we going to do it? When are we going to do it?
You've asked some very important questions, and I'd actually like to turn that around and ask you, what do we do? At this point, what do we do?
Well, we all know that the American Bar Association infiltrated all three branches of government. It's a rogue government. It's also known as a de facto government. It's no longer operating under the rule of law under the United States Constitution. What we got to do is, from city to city, county to county, state to state, country to country, state to state, we form a common law grand jury. Start with your sheriff, educating your local sheriff, because at the end of the day, we need the sheriff.
Well, how do we start a grand jury?
A common, easy. You get 50 people in the room. Let's say 100, and you're going to bring this evidence out, and you tell them that these co-conspirators committed a crime. Matter of fact, right now, Hillary Clinton, her crime with uranium one, and Kate Brown with Calico Resource. You bring indictments, and in order way that you bring indictments, you form all common law grand jury by getting 100 people to show the evidence to. Out of those 100 people, 25 people become a jurors with 10 alternates. You guys create your own indictment and you give it to a constitutional sheriff, like in Harney County, that's the constitutional sheriff, and you have him go ahead and exercise that indictment by arresting or calling upon the militia or deputizing anybody he thinks it feels fit, even the Oath Keepers, the 3%ers, any patriot that is willing to go and arrest Kate Brown, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Harry Reid. That's how we do it.
So,
There's no but and about it. And we got to when you take that oath with a common law grand jury, your name will be there. You will swear to uphold the oath, and it will be registered with the county recorder's office and the clerk of the courts.
So let me just, you'll have to forgive me because I don't have a whole lot of experience or knowledge pertaining to grand juries. And I just this seems a little far-fetched to me, but again, I'm not. There's no judgments on my part. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You just get a random assortment of 50 or 100 people together, and you guys decide that you're going to convene for a grand jury, and you decide that you're going to indict Hillary, and you take that indictment to a constitutional sheriff, and he's supposed to go arrest her. Is that the way that works?
That's how it works. Well, before you have the indictment, so before the indictment was created, everybody has to agree with the evidence, and if everybody validates that the evidence is credible, then you will swear 25 members as jurors, 10 alternates. Everybody will sign a piece of paper stating that they understand that they took the oath of office. That list of names will be registered with the county recorder's office and the clerk of the courts. And then once that is registered, the indictment is created and give it to a constitutional sheriff, like in Harney County. The Harney County sheriff can say, you know what, I don't have enough sheriffs to go after these individuals. Well, guess what? The sheriff is the Supreme Court of the law of the land. And under the United States Constitution, he has the authority to deputize as many people as it fits to bring those criminals upon a common law grand jury. That's how it works, and that's what I stated. But I beg everybody to read the 1994 by Scalia before he was assassinated. Let me clarify that. Before Scalia was assassinated, he wrote about the common law grand jury at the fourth branch of government. At the end of the day, we are the fourth branch of government to stop any tyranny. When your legislative, your executive branch, and your judicial branch fails, and there's no law, and they're acting lawlessly, it's upon the American people as the fourth branch of government to stand up. That's why we're not part of any of those three branches of government, and we are the final defense under 3331, which is the oath of office. And look up the militia, 1971. 1871. Look it up. I mean, it's there by our founding fathers. They knew this. What's crazy is that our founding fathers wrote this. And here we are today.
So you've said a couple things here I want to actually comment on. You say that first of all, Scalia was assassinated, and this is a point of contention that I typically haven't seen any evidence that would make me believe that. I understand there were some reports that he had a pillow over his face, but the man was 79 years old. I've said in the past actually on this show about this conspiracy theory, I guess, relating to this. When I hear hooves, I don't immediately think unicorns. The very first thing I think is horses. So I think it's a jump to say that Scalia was assassinated, but granted, and especially just to clarify, I may be the only person I know that does this, but I sleep with a pillow over my face. So if I ever die and there's a pillow over my face, then it's not foul play. Most likely, I just died of sleep. But the man was 79 years old, so there's a point of contention there. But I don't want to harp on it. But I definitely agree with you on one issue in particular, and that is the fact that the American people are the most important aspect of government. And where I would differ in my opinion, because I don't know a whole lot about common law, and I don't know how that would work. I also don't think that it would be a good idea, for example, to put like state officials in a position where they have to go confront a federal government official who's going to have federal government protection, and then you have a state versus federal standoff. And I just don't think that's going to end well for anyone, and the PR behind that isn't going to look good either for our side. Where I do think that we should actually do something as a community is, number one, through jury nullification, because in the instance of this Oregon man, he was sentenced to jail for 30 days for collecting water. He was charged over $1,500 in fines because he had 3 reservoirs on his property to collect and use rainwater. So this is all based off, he had these 9 misdemeanor charges under a 1925 law for having what state water managers called 3 illegal reservoirs on his property. And first of all, I completely disagree with trying to charge somebody for collecting rainwater. As you said, it's from God. This is a natural resource, especially if it falls on your property. If it's your land, it fell on your property, you should be able to do with whatever you want with it, as long as you're not hurting anyone. So my issue here is that if we had used, it only takes one person on a jury to nullify it. So if we, as American people, we've been failing at actually using jury nullification, which I think is important. Do you know a whole lot about that, or would you like to comment on jury nullification at all?
No, absolutely. Jury nullification is phenomenal. But at the end of the day, we had one of our patriots get incarcerated for educating the people on jury nullification, and I expected an uproar and people coming out for his defense. And when he was educating the people on jury nullification, and where the American people are now. I mean, don't get me wrong. Prior to this, I was actually hanging out with my friends, going kayaking, going whitewater rafting, hanging out at the bar, watching basketball, football, and baseball. But at the end of the day, what this gentleman was doing was doing what was right, constitutionally right. And every American needs to understand what jury nullification means. And if it's unconstitutional, guess what? He's acquitted. He shouldn't even be facing these charges. He should be walking home and going home with his kid, his work, or whatever he's doing. And at the end of the day, is when you incarcerate somebody that the law is not constitutional, well, at the end of the day, you're going to pay for that through taxation. It's going to affect your pocket, because at the end of the day, somebody has to pay the prison, somebody has to pay the guards. Mm-hmm. For what? For a little misdemeanor that he did? Mm-hmm. Because somebody's profiting every time an individual is incarcerated. Everybody's profiting from every time the guy sleeps in the bed sheet. Every time somebody's profiting every time he brushes his teeth or using the water. Somebody's profiting every time they use that electricity. But guess what? Somebody's got to pay for that. We are paying for it. We, the taxpayers, are paying for it. So we got to understand, every time we put somebody in jail, we make sure, I always say, make sure when somebody goes to jail, it's because he committed a homicide, or because he committed false and forgery on a document, or committed fraud upon somebody. But to state that somebody's going to go to jail for a traffic ticket or because he has some legal substance is ridiculous. And it's costing us money.
I just think the craziest thing, especially with jury nullification, in reference to this Oregon case where this guy went to jail for 30 days for collecting rainwater on his property, I think this is crazy. I mean, I want to meet the jurors who every single one of them unanimously, it's in order to convict, that's what you have to have. You have to have a unanimous decision. They all decided that this man deserved to go to jail for collecting rainwater. the psyche of the American people, I think, has changed. We no longer are looking at a presumption of innocence, and even if again, one of the things I always say about jury nullification is, first of all, it is a check and a balance. That is the reason why it is there, is for us to check and balance the government. And not only are we deciding whether or not the guy violated the law, but the law itself is on trial. So we have to decide whether or not this law is constitutional and whether or not there was any damage done. Now, you went into a topic that I am very opinionated on, and it's prison reform. Personally, I cannot stand the way that we have our prison system now. We're taking people that didn't hurt anyone or they were not violent offenders and locking them in jail. And it hurts people. Let me give an example here, Lazaro. If I stole your car, for example, okay, and the police catch me, but I've already sold the car to a chop shop, it's gone. You're not getting your car back, okay? And at this point, if they send me to jail, you're actually getting punished twice now, because not only did you lose your car, and you're not going to get reimbursed for that, but also now you have to pay the tax burden of housing me in jail. And again, I wasn't a violent offender, so now after spending years in jail amongst violent offenders, maybe I will become a hardened criminal, a worse criminal when I get out, and you're not any better off as a result. I think that jail itself should be reserved for the truly violent offenders or repeat offenders that are just not going to rehabilitate themselves. And we should have some kind of halfway house set up to where if I stole your car, I'm now responsible for paying you back, and I have to go live in a halfway house and work until I pay you back. And I think that is the way that we should do that. What do you think?
Oh, and I totally agree. The problem is, like you stated, it's not set up that way. You know who benefits? The judges and the lawyers, because they're the ones that are going to get kicked back because of the lobbyists that they went ahead and they said, hey, we need as many prisoners as we can in X facility, in A facility, in B facility, in X facility. And that's where the money's going to. The money's not going to me, the victim that was victimized. It's going to all these judges, dirty politicians, and lobbyists. That's the ones that are actually laughing straight to the bank. And at the end of the day, the victim is crucified. And like you stated, we're crucified on both aspects. But you know what? There's actually a perfect example right now. And there's a case in Montana, and I'll give you the case number. It's CR 1507-H as in Henry, -D as in Delta, W as in Whiskey, M as in Mary, U.S. versus Joe Robertson. That case is huge because it respects to the BLM. The BLM wants to incarcerate this man, even though his land is patented. They want to incarcerate him because he disturbed his land. Because he got somebody to come and survey his land to look for uranium. And now because he had somebody come and disturb his land looking for uranium, they want to put this guy in jail. And at the same time, they want to fine him. One, where's that money? After that, he's being fined. Who's going to benefit off of that money? And two, after they incarcerate him, who's going to pay for him being incarcerated? And three, which is the most reasonable question should be asked, is if the guy patented his land, who in the hell is going to tell him what he can and can't do on his own property? And we got a rogue judge, a retired judge, is going to start presiding in his case this coming Monday, meaning tomorrow, versus this guy at the BLM, the Department of Fish and Wildlife are coming, and the prosecutor's running with it. Are you serious? Is this America, or are we living in Russia, China, and North Korea?
It just seems like more and more we're getting further away from property rights and moving more and more towards, first of all, federalism, where the federal government is in every aspect of our lives. They teach federalism in colleges. One of the things I've learned is that they use this diagram where it's it's overlapping circles. You have states' rights and federal rights, and they share certain rights in the middle. Well, the issue here is that the federal government has encroached further and further and further upon states' rights, which I find objectionable. But also, it's it's disturbing to me that the idea of property rights, we're stripping this out of our culture now, where the federal government has a hand in everything. And I've mentioned this before. The Wicker v. Filburn case, the Supreme Court case, is one of the most detrimental cases that we've seen in this. It was in the New Deal era. The federal government, the Supreme Court decided that the federal government has a right to regulate using the Interstate Commerce Clause things that are not interstate, meaning they're not leaving the state, and they're also not commerce. So that they've completely flipped the script on what rights they actually have. Again, the Constitution, this is why I'm a constitutionalist, because there's a very limited amount of things that the federal government is allowed to do based upon the Constitution. It's the amendment process. Everything after the Bill of Rights is what they can do, the things that they are allowed to do. And everything in the Bill of Rights is the things they're not allowed to do. So it's very important that people understand that the federal government, if it's not in the Constitution, if it doesn't say somewhere in the Constitution that they can do that, then they can't. They've never been given that authority. And if they want it, they should add it to the Constitution through an amendment process.
And I totally agree. And the most beauty about it, you want how corrupt the system is? The same guy that I was just talking about with regard to you going Monday, there was a hung jury about 2 months ago in respect to his case. And now the prosecutor is prosecuting him again, despite the hang jury, which is ridiculous. It's insane. And what these guys are giving themselves is the title of nobility. And I beg, and again, I reiterate, look at yourself a title of nobility. Look at Article 1, Section 9, Article 10, Section 10. Article 1, Section 10, and the Organic 13th Amendment, 1819, title of nobility.
It's interesting. It's interesting you talk about title of nobility. I was actually looking up the Esquire, what Esquire means with lawyers. You know how they'll say so-and-so Esquire. That's actually a title of nobility, essentially, that has carried over from Britain. It stood for squire, which is the servant of a knight, which again that's a title of nobility. So we have still been using titles of nobility in terms of our lawyers. Every single lawyer can call themselves Esquire, which I find that kind of weird, because there is specifically in the Constitution that there shall be no titles of nobility.
Exactly, and that's what we have. And all these bar members are being self-appointed, like Anna J. Brown. She was appointed as a judge. No different than Kate Brown. She's a governor. She was appointed. She was not elected by the people. David Ward, he also was appointed, not elected by the people. Stephen E. Grassi, as a budget administrator, he was appointed, not elected by the people. But the most crazy thing about it is you got Stephen E. Grassi being a judge, a commissioner, budget administrator. He's a CEO, and he bought land from the Bureau of Land Management, over 20 acres, and he converted it into a golf course. Wow. So now, when you go ahead and you have a dispute against the BLM, the United States Forest Services, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and you got to go in front of this gentleman, well, what kind of due process are you having when he already infiltrated all three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial? So where's the due process under the Bill of Rights?
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with you on that. So, Lazaro, we actually got to head to the next segment here, but first of all, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. You have a Facebook page that you can share with everybody, right, so they can get more information on what you're talking about? Absolutely.
Lazaro Pesanaro, and then it's ECENARRO. Unfortunately, Facebook limits me up to 5,000 people. I'm tapped out, but by all means, I want people to learn the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the Federalist Papers. This is for us, not just for us, but for our kids and for our country and our military. Because remember, we're sending our military overseas to fight for our freedom, and yet we're arming our enemies with uranium. So, realistically, what is the price of freedom when we're actually giving our enemies uranium?
Very scary stuff. I've been concerned about this kind of stuff too. I've talked about how, we funded, created, armed ISIS, and now it seems like through proxy we're directly trying to give them uranium. That does not sound like a wise move. Does not sound like a very good geopolitical strategy. But thanks so much for joining us, Lazaro. And you can check him out, Lazaro Ecenaro. That's ECENARRO on Facebook. Again, that's Lazaro Ecenaro. Thanks so much, Lazaro.
Thank you, and you take care. God bless you.
All right, you too. Take care. Bye-bye. All right, gang, so we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break, and when we come back, I'm going to dive right into these featured topics here. I want to talk about the Ted Cruz National Enquirer story, hashtag Trump loves Pecker, hashtag Trump pays for Wiener, Trump on abortion, punishment for women, Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump on the economy, why you shouldn't get caught up in the pro-Trump or anti-Trump movements, what is fascism and nationalism, 25,000 signatures for a petition for firearms at the Republican National Convention, and so much more. You guys don't want to miss this. We will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/onthemoveshow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang, we're back. And you are now listening to the second hour of the program. Thank you for sticking with us. And by the way, if you're just now joining the program, I want to thank you for tuning in. And also just to let you know that we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at OnTheMoveShow.com. That's our website. That's our hub. That's where we got all of our good stuff over there. So feel free to check us out there, OnTheMoveShow.com. You can also like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Get us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. If you subscribe on there, you can actually get the podcast as well. Immediately following the episode, it automatically converts over there. So I'd be much obliged if you would please subscribe to us there. Also, if you'd like to join today's conversation, the number to the show is 360-450-5625. Again, that is 360-450-5625. Anything on your mind? You got something that's stuck in your craw? Feel free to give us a call. I like how that rhymes there. Give us a call. Let us know what's on your mind. Anything's up for discussion. Also, you can message us on @OnTheMoveShow or Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow as well. So before we move into these topics here, I actually want to go back to what we were talking about in the first hour. Ted Cruz in the poll in Wisconsin and his endorsement. He got an endorsement from Governor Scott Walker of Wisconsin. So that's a pretty big endorsement for that. It's looking like he's going to run away with the primary in Wisconsin. I believe that's on Tuesday. Now, it's important to note that Wisconsin is a winner-take-most state, so they have a weird delegate math that they go through here. Let's see if I can find the breakdown of this. Of Wisconsin's 42, by the way, this is an article on redstate.com. The article is titled, New Poll and a Big Endorsement Increases Ted Cruz Wisconsin Momentum. This is written by Streef? I don't know. That's what it says, Streef. Articles April 3rd, 2016, so it was from today. Anyway, it looks like the poll is showing Ted Cruz with 40.3%, Donald Trump at 35.5%, and Kasich at holding 18% as of right now, according to this article. And anyway, so the delegate breakdown, the way it looks is of the Wisconsin's 42 Republican delegates, 24 are allocated by congressional districts. The GOP's other 18 delegates come from come from 15 at large, and 3 members of Republican National Committee. Those go to the winner statewide. So anyway, it's entirely possible that Cruz is going to come out of this with a huge victory, and I think it's very telling, especially when you consider that he was losing in this state to Donald Trump not too long ago. And I've been saying that there's going to be a momentum. There's going to be a surge for Ted Cruz now that Rubio is out of the race. And actually, let's go through. Let's do some math. This is always the funnest thing of doing radio, right? Is let's do math on the radio. Woohoo! All right. So everybody, get your party hats on. We're going to do some math together. So right now, Kasich is in third place, the delegate count, well, at least out of people who are still running. I'm not even sure if Rubio has more than he does at that point. But anyway, Kasich has 143 delegates, Cruz has 463, and Trump has 736. So the way this plans out here, let's actually go all the way back in the Wayback Machine let's go to February. You guys remember Iowa, yeah, crazy, right? So let's do some columns here. I'm writing them down. We got a Trump column, and we got a Cruz column, and we've got let's go with a Rubio column, and just see what happens. Let's play with the math here, okay? So in Iowa, there were 30 delegates at stake. Cruz won, and he has 8 delegates from Iowa. How many did Trump win? Trump won 7. Pretty crazy that he won 7 even though he lost. So anyway, yeah, so Rubio, he has 7 as well, and Carson had 3. So you know what, let's go ahead and put Carson on here as well, and we'll just assume that if Carson wasn't in the race, since he endorsed Trump, we'll give him his delegates to Trump. All right, so in New Hampshire, there were 23 delegates at stake. Trump won New Hampshire. He has 11 delegates from that. And let's see, Kasich had 4. Not even going to write any of that down. Cruz has 3 from there, so we'll do that. 3. And Rubio had 2. So Carson doesn't look like he made the cut in that one. South Carolina, Trump won 50 delegates. I believe that was a winner-take-all, so it looks like he has all of those delegates. Then in Nevada, Trump won. He had 14 delegates. Add that to him. And let's see, Rubio had 7. In Nevada, Cruz had 6. And Kasich had 1. Not going to count that as well because it doesn't really matter for the math that we're doing here. So let's go to March. What happened in March? There's a lot of stuff going on in March here. So let's go through it all. Let's start with Minnesota. Minnesota, Rubio won Minnesota, and he had 17 delegates in Minnesota. All right, Cruz had 13. So you can see Rubio's involvement in this race is pretty substantial. Again, he had 7 delegates, 2, 7, 17. These could all be going towards Cruz. Again, this is my opinion. If you're a Rubio supporter, you're very likely to vote for Cruz, given the choice Kasich, Trump, or Cruz. Those are your options right now. This is where we're going. So anyway, let's see. We had Cruz with 13, Rubio. Let's see. That was Minnesota. Rubio won with 17, Cruz had 13, and Trump had 8 out of that. That was in Minnesota. So Alabama, 50 delegates at stake. Trump won with 36 delegates. And let's see, Cruz had 13, and Rubio had 1. Going to Alaska, there were 28 delegates at stake. Cruz won Alaska. Oh, yeah. Cruz won Alaska. All right, that was 12 delegates at stake for Alaska. And Trump had 11 delegates from Alaska. So let's write that down. And let's see, Marco Rubio had 5 delegates. Okay. And moving on, let's go to Arkansas now. Trump won Arkansas. He had 16 delegates from Arkansas. Let's see, Cruz had 15 delegates, and Marco Rubio had 9. So we can already see, just in that state, Cruz would have come out the victor if Rubio's votes were his by a pretty wide margin. So let's go to Georgia. 76 delegates at state. Trump won, and he had 42 delegates from Georgia. Rubio had 16. And let's see, Cruz had 18. And again, that split right there, that could have been enough to take Cruz over the top. I think Georgia was a winner-take-most state, so I think that maybe had an effect with it. Let's actually look in the actual dynamics here. So, yes, if Rubio, for example, in Georgia, he had 24.4% of the vote. He was actually in second place. Ted Cruz had 23.6% in third place. So if you add that together, they would have already, if all of the Marco Rubio supporters were voting for Ted Cruz, he would have actually had more votes, and he would have won. I'm guessing this has to be a winner-take-most state because Donald Trump won 42 delegates. There had to have been some at-large delegates at play here. So again, if Rubio was out of the race, Cruz would have won Georgia. Just looking at this, no doubt. So Massachusetts, Trump won with 22 delegates, and Kasich had 8, Rubio had 8, and Cruz had 4. All right, so that may have been actually a pretty good race if Rubio was not involved in this race here. Let's see, Rubio had 17.9% of the votes in Massachusetts. Ted Cruz had 9.6%. Wouldn't have put him anywhere near Donald Trump's 49.3%, though. But it would have taken him, a little closer, and he would have absorbed the 8 delegates that Marco Rubio had in that situation. So Oklahoma. Well, let's see here. Ted Cruz won. He won 15 delegates in Oklahoma. Trump won 13. So I actually want to look at the breakdown on this here. Let's see. Ted Cruz had 34.4% of the votes in Oklahoma. Donald Trump had 28.3%. And Marco Rubio had, that was 12 delegates and 26.0%. So this would have been a landslide. It would have been over 60%, 60.4% for Ted Cruz winning in Oklahoma had Marco Rubio not received the votes that he did. Okay, so let's move to Tennessee. This is all, by the way, that happened on March 1st. So Tennessee, Trump won Tennessee, had 33 delegates. I might actually run out of paper over here. Cruz had 16 delegates in Tennessee. Rubio had 9. You can see we're starting to build up a pretty big portfolio of what Rubio did in this race. Now, this is not necessarily bad. We're going to get into it in a moment here, but let's continue here. Cruz won Texas. He had 104 delegates out of Texas, 104. Rubio had 3, and Donald Trump had 48. 48. That's interesting. Let's look at the breakdown of percentages on this here. Marco Rubio had 17.7% of the vote. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think I'm right in this, Texas is a winner-take-all state up to a threshold. I think you have to get above 50%. So if Marco Rubio was not in this race in Texas, if he would have dropped out, he would have given the race over to Ted Cruz, and it would have been no 48. There's 48 delegates that went to Donald Trump. None of those would have went to Donald Trump. Again, Marco Rubio had 17.7% of the votes in Texas. If that went to Ted Cruz, which all he had to do, he had 43.8%. He only needed 6.2% more votes to get a winner-take-all in the state of Texas. So, yeah, Marco Rubio screwing everything up. Okay, let's go to let's see, Vermont. Vermont was 16 delegates at state. Trump won. He had 8 delegates. The other 8 went to Kasich. And let's see, Virginia. Virginia, Trump won 17 delegates. And Rubio won 16. And Cruz had 8. All right, so Carson had 3. Let's give those 3 to Carson there, because let's assume that those would go to Trump. Let's go to Kansas now. This is March 5th. There was Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, and Maine. So Kansas, Ted Cruz won, 24 delegates. All righty. And Trump had 9. And Rubio had 6. By the way, if you guys are listening to this, I just have to tip my hat to you guys, because this right here shows that you're dedicated. Shows that you're dedicated to staying involved here, because I'm literally reading numbers. I could probably bore people just the same amount by reading the ingredients of food I have in my pantry. It's the equivalent here. So first of all, I appreciate this, but we're going to get to a point on this. So this information is really important. I didn't want to do this off the air because I want you guys to go through this with me and hear it for yourself. So let's see here. We have Kentucky. That's my home state. Trump won. Boo. Kentucky, what are y'all doing? Crazy. So Trump won. He won 17 delegates. Cruz had 15. And let's see, Rubio had 7. So you can clearly see there are a lot of Rubio delegates that if they did go to Cruz, this race could be tremendously different. Louisiana, 46 delegates at stake. Trump won. He had 18 delegates. And let's see here. Cruz had 18 as well. That's interesting how that worked out. Let's look at the breakdown. But Rubio had 5. Let's see what was going on with Louisiana. Trump had 41.4% of the vote, and Ted Cruz had 37.8%. Now, keep in mind, Marco Rubio had 11.2%. If that would have went to Ted Cruz, if Marco Rubio, not in the race, goes to Ted Cruz, that would have easily put him over Donald Trump for the win. So not only are we talking about how Donald Trump is getting more delegates, I'm not even going to factor in what it might look like if Donald Trump didn't win. All right, we'll just add the number of delegates that Marco Rubio has into what Ted Cruz could have had, and show you the difference there. But also keep in mind that if Rubio wasn't in this race and Ted Cruz had all these delegates going to him, or in the percentages of the popular vote going to him as well, Donald Trump would actually have less delegates as well. Marco Rubio, if I'm going to pound this drum here, Marco Rubio has affected this race negatively. He said he wasn't going to drop out because he didn't want to abandon the party to Donald Trump, but he's actually strengthened Donald Trump's hand. So anyway, looking to Maine, Ted Cruz amazingly won Maine, an area that he shouldn't have won. Nobody really expected him to win, but he won 12 delegates out of there. Trump had 9 delegates, and Kasich had 2. Let's see here. Marco Rubio, what did he do in this race? He had 8% of the vote. Marco Rubio, 8% of the vote. Now let's just look at this here. In Maine, he would have actually put Cruz up to, just with the 8%, that would have been 53.9% of the vote, as opposed to the 45.9% that he actually got. I don't know if there's a winner-take-all in Maine, but if there was, if it was above 50%, I don't know what the threshold is there, if there is even one in Maine. But again, you have to keep all these things in mind, because winner-take-all can change. And the fact that Rubio pulled away 8% of the popular vote it's pretty concerning. But looking at these numbers anyway, it's kind of crazy. Maine, Ted Cruz only had 8,550 people vote for him in Maine. That's like nobody. Who's in Maine? Is there like 10 people in Maine or something? I don't know. Anyway, let's go to Hawaii here. Hawaii, 19 delegates at stake. Trump won. He has 11 delegates. Cruz has 7. And Rubio had 1. So let's see what the breakdown of Hawaii was here. Let's see. Okay, so Donald Trump won at 42.4%. Ted Cruz had 32.7%, and Marco Rubio had 13.1%. So again, we have another situation here. Let me whip out the handy-dandy calculator. Ted Cruz at 32.7 to 13.1. Ted Cruz would have won the state of Hawaii if Marco Rubio was not in this race. He would have won with 45.8% of the vote, and Donald Trump would have had 42.4%. So, again, I'm not guaranteeing that every single one of these voters would have came out and voted for Ted Cruz, but it would have at least been close, because I think, arguably, if you would have voted for Rubio, you would have voted for Cruz, especially over Donald Trump. And not very likely. Who's voting for John Kasich? Seriously. Who out there? Who among us is voting for John Kasich? Anyway, so Michigan up for grabs here. 59 delegates. Donald Trump won with 25 delegates. Ted Cruz had 17. And Marco Rubio had 0. Let's see. John Kasich, he won 17 delegates out of Michigan as well. He got 24.3% of the vote in third place. Ted Cruz, second place, 24.9%. And Donald Trump with 36.5% of the vote, pulling in first place. Again, Trump won 25 delegates. Ted Cruz won 17. Kasich won 17. Rubio actually didn't win any in this, and I'm not sure. I think he may have dropped out prior to this race. I don't recall. But let's just do little math again here. Okay, so remember, Donald Trump had 36. This is in Michigan. Donald Trump had 36.5% of the vote. Ted Cruz had 24.9%. What would happen if the 9.3% of the vote that went to Marco Rubio was with Ted Cruz instead? It would have brought him up to 34.2%. That would have been a whole lot closer to Trump's 36.5%, and he would have potentially fleeced off a few more of these delegates, and Kasich would have gotten less, presumably, I would assume. So, anyway, interesting. I think we gain by actually looking at each one. We have enough primaries now where we can see a pattern here starting to emerge. Especially, like I said, I think the biggest spoiler in this, other than John Kasich, because we all know he thinks he's Abraham Lincoln, that he's going to come out of a contested convention, a brokered convention, with the nomination. This is what he thinks. But I find that highly questionable. If the establishment tried to do a bait and switch with John Kasich, I think it would destroy the party. That's just my opinion. I think that we're getting close to the point where the Republican Party is going to be destroyed anyway, and I'll come up with my analysis a little bit later in the show on that. But let's move on here. Idaho. Cruz won Idaho. There were 32 delegates at stake. Cruz won 20 delegates. Donald Trump won 12, and no one else won anything else. But just a heads up, I don't know if Idaho is a winner-take-all state or not. Let's actually Google this real fast here. Is Idaho winner-take-all? Let's look. Idaho front-loading. What this means, Idaho. Shoot, doesn't look like it's going to be the easy answer here. Let's see, Idaho winner take. Oh, can't find it. Okay. In order to gauge the potential impact of the changes, winner-take-all, proportionality spectrum. This is not the information I needed. Okay. Let's see. The backdoor. Yep, nothing I can find here. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time digging on this, but you get the drift. So let's see here. We had Cruz with 20 delegates, Trump with 12, and Cruz had 45.4% of the vote. Marco Rubio had 15.9%. Donald Trump had 28.1%. If Marco Rubio's was added to Ted Cruz's, that would have put him at what? We're looking at over 60% of the vote in Idaho. So he obviously would have gotten more delegates than just the 20. Let's see here. So Mississippi, moving on to Mississippi. Trump won Mississippi. He gained 24 delegates. 24. And let's see, Cruz had 13. Cruz had 13 delegates. Let's give a little analysis here on that. So Marco Rubio only pulled away 5.1% of the vote. that 5.1% wouldn't have been enough to overtake Donald Trump. So let's move to Washington, D.C. Rubio won D.C. He got 10 delegates in D.C. Ted Cruz only had 12.4% of the vote. Marco Rubio had 37.3%. It's interesting he won Washington, D.C. It's very interesting. But he won 10 delegates from that. Imagine what would have happened if he was not in that race. Maybe that 37.3% would have been added to Cruz's 12.4%, and maybe he would have taken the 10 or more delegates. Kasich had 35.5% in D.C., and he received 9 of those delegates as well. So Wyoming, Cruz, let's see, looks like Cruz won. Yeah, Cruz won Wyoming. He had 9 delegates, and that was 66.3% of the vote. And we're looking in this primary, only 644 people voted. So your vote really counts in Wyoming. Donald Trump pulled away with 1 delegate out of Wyoming with 7.2%. Marco Rubio had 19.5% of the vote, pulling him in second place and giving him 1 delegate. So that's one more delegate that could have went to Cruz. I doubt that it's a winner take all in Wyoming, considering he had 66. Ted Cruz had 66% of the vote, and he didn't get them all. So anyway, Illinois. Ted, let's see, where are we here? Sorry, I lost my place. Illinois. Trump won, and he won 53 delegates. Oof, that's a lot of delegates. Cruz got 9, and Kasich got 5. Let's see what Marco Rubio did. Marco Rubio is responsible for Ted Cruz losing Illinois. Let's look it up here. Donald Trump had 53 delegates, but he had 38.8% of the vote. Ted Cruz had 9 delegates, but he had 30.3% of the vote. John Kasich, with his 5 delegates, had 19.7% of the vote. But check this out, the guy who received 0 delegates, Marco Rubio with 8.7% of the vote. Let's add 8.7 to Ted Cruz's 30.3%. That would have given him 39% of the vote. And guess who won at 38.8%? That was Donald Trump. So Ted Cruz, in theory, would have won over Donald Trump by 0.2% of the vote and would have received a whole slew of delegates. As you can clearly see, this has to be a winner-take-most state because Ted Cruz was only 8.5% behind him in the popular vote, but yet he received a hugely unproportional amount, 53, as opposed to Ted Cruz 9. So again, Rubio acting as the spoiler. North Carolina, 72 delegates up for stake in North Carolina. Trump won with 29 delegates, and Cruz had 27. And Rubio pulled away with 6. And let's see, Carson had 1. So let's look at that here. So let's see, this must have been a proportional state. Cruz had 36.8% in second place. First place, Donald Trump, 40.2%. Rubio, 7.7%. That 7.7% added to Cruz, again, would put him over Donald's 40.2%, and he would have won North Carolina and obviously gotten at least the 6 more delegates that Rubio was awarded in this instance. So, again, case after case of what has happened here. Now, the reason why I'm showing you this is I'm illustrating why there is going to be a surge for Ted Cruz. This is immensely important because I'm just trying to back up my case here and show you why it's so important. Why Ted Cruz is going to get the momentum here coming up. So let's see. Ohio, all 66 delegates went to John Kasich, who won 46.8% of the vote. Donald Trump had 35.6%, but didn't get him anything. Ted Cruz had 13.1%. He received nothing. Marco Rubio had 2.9%. It wouldn't have mattered in this case at all. But John Kasich managed to take away 66 delegates away that would have potentially went to Donald Trump. So let's see. Florida. Now, this is the reason why Marco Rubio was staying in, because he thought that he could win Florida, his home state. Donald Trump ended up winning. He won all 99 delegates in Florida, with 45.7% of the vote. So let's just do a little math here. I'm just curious what would have happened if Marco Rubio's stuff went to Ted Cruz. Let's see. Marco Rubio had 27%. Ted Cruz had 17.1%. That would have put him at 44.1% of the vote. Still wouldn't have been enough to beat Donald Trump, who had 45.7%. So, in that situation, maybe it didn't have an effect. So, let's see. Missouri here. Oh, I forgot to add Donald Trump's 99 delegates off of Florida. So, yeah, he won 99. And let's see, Missouri, Donald Trump had 25 delegates, and Cruz had 15. Cruz obviously came in second. And let's just look at the math on this. Oh, yeah. So Marco Rubio in fourth place with 6.1% of the vote. It would have actually affected the race and changed to 1. Donald Trump would not have gotten the disproportional amount here because, again, Donald Trump only had 40.9% of the votes in this. Ted Cruz only lost by 0.2% of the popular vote. He had 40.7%. So with Marco Rubio's 6.1%, that would have put Ted Cruz at 46.8% over Donald Trump's 40.9%, and that would have made a difference by at least 10 delegates, I would assume here. So, though Marco Rubio is not currently holding these delegates, he still took them away from Ted Cruz and gave them to Donald Trump. So, that's Missouri. Let's go to March 22nd, we had Arizona and Utah. Let's start with Arizona. Trump got the popular vote. He won the disproportionate amount here with 47.1% of the vote. And let's see. I think I remember hearing something about Rubio actually polling votes in the early voting from Arizona, even though he had already dropped out here. Let me see how many votes Rubio won. How many votes did Rubio get in Arizona? Okay. Early votes protest Marco Rubio. Okay, this is ABC15.com. Marco Rubio gets more than 70,000 votes in primary. 14,000. I don't know what percentage that is, but 70,000 he got in the Arizona primary. So let's look at Arizona here. 70,000. Okay, let's just add this. Let's add the number of what Ted Cruz got 132,147 votes. Marco Rubio had over 70,000. So let's add 70,000 to that, and that puts us at 202,147. That is pretty darn close. It's not quite what Trump got. Trump got 249,000, darn near 250,000 people voting for him. So he would have still beaten Ted Cruz by, 47,000 votes. So it would have been closer. I don't know what the threshold is for the winner take all, but it would have been a lot closer. Ted Cruz would have had much more than 24.9% of the vote. It would have been, a little closer, probably closer to 39% of the vote, 40%, something like that. So let's see here. Trump pulled away with 58 delegates. Cruz got none, zilch in Arizona. Cruz won in Utah, though, giving him 40 delegates. It was a winner-take-all state. He got 69.2% of the vote. And let's go ahead and I don't think we've had anything recently here. Yeah, we don't. We don't have anything in April. So the next contests here are Wisconsin. That's on April 5th. Then we have a big delay between then and the next one, which will be New York on April 19th. Now, I'm telling you, this is exactly what I'm saying it was going to happen, is happening right now. Ted Cruz got the endorsement from Governor Scott Walker. The momentum is swinging. The pendulum is swinging. And people are starting to find out that they don't like Donald Trump. People are starting to realize, this guy's very divisive. Obviously, the Democrats can't stand the guy, even though he's a progressive. The Bernie Sanders supporters cannot stand. They're losing their mind with Donald Trump. They're calling him a fascist, and they hate. You know how they hate those billionaires? All of that. He's a billionaire. They're not going to vote for him. And more importantly, with the media crap storm that has happened this week with Donald Trump, that he touched the sacred cow. He touched the third rail in Democrat politics, which is never, ever, ever come out against abortion. Never talk about it. Never say anything negative about it at all. If you're trying to win over Democrats, you cannot be pro-life. You just can't. You can't be pro-life to win over these foaming at the mouth Democrats who think that you have again. They don't care that you have a right enshrined in the Constitution to bear arms, but the right that they have to an abortion is even more concrete, more set in stone, more sacred to them than what is actually in the Constitution written. The ones that they have interpreted are more important than the ones that are already written. Okay, but I digress. But to think that Donald Trump is going to ever win Democrats over, win the liberals over, win the progressives over, I think it's a pipe dream. That's just my opinion. I respect anyone who has a different opinion. I'm just giving you my respectful opinion. So, Wisconsin, Cruz is now pulling in the lead, which is surprising. Also, I heard a story. One thing that might actually attribute what happened is that talk radio in Wisconsin is changing the landscape. Apparently, all the talk radio guys out there, the conservative talk radio guys in Wisconsin, are coming out. They're hashtag never Trump. They're speaking how much they dislike Trump. They've had Trump on their shows, and they have been hammering him. I don't know why this guy is going on their shows. He must have no idea who they are or what they've been saying, but they have been anti-Trump from the beginning. And they are forming a line and saying, no, he's not our guy, he's not our guy. So talk radio, first of all, I just want to let you all know. I'm currently doing this, and I don't really think that I have I don't have power. I don't do this talk radio show to gain any power. That's not what I'm doing. I'm doing this to engage in discourse, engage in conversation, debate, intellectual thought, have you guys challenge me on issues, and obviously highlight the issues that I feel are very important that we all need to be standing up for or against. So, but the power of talk radio as a tool, which is essentially we're talking about speech. Your speech, what you do, can affect elections. Look what's going on in Wisconsin. Talk radio very well may change an election because of the momentum that's being gained in Wisconsin with Ted Cruz. Now, you all know how I feel about Ted Cruz. Again, I'm not a supporter. I wouldn't call myself a supporter, but out of everybody we can vote for, I mean, come on. The guy wants to abolish the IRS and pass a flat tax and eliminate a lot of these regulations coming from the EPA. He wants to dramatically reduce the size of government. What is not to like about that? Now, there's other secondary and tertiary issues that I disagree with him on, but on principle, He's a constitutionalist, and he has been for quite some time. He's got a proven record of being a constitutionalist. So all of his reasons, all of his justification is sourced from the Constitution, which is something that I can get behind. He's the only guy in this race that I can see myself voting for. So that's just to give you a little background. If you're not familiar with me or what I've said in the past about Ted Cruz, I like the guy. I really do. I like him as a person. From what I have seen about him, he seems to be a good guy. And he seems to be rooted in the Constitution, and he's religious. And look, I'm agnostic. I don't have any issue with him being religious. I just don't subscribe to that. I happen to think that Christians, for the most part, are good people, and the reason why I think that is because they have a moral code, a moral philosophy that they live by. I think people that have moral codes typically are good people because they have things that these are guidelines of what they can or should do or cannot do. That I think that excuse me. I think that's important. So I happen to be friends with a lot of Christians. I like a lot of Christians, and I happen to side with them on issues of religious rights and things along those lines. I don't think they should be forced to do anything against their will. It's like I don't think anybody should be forced to do anything against their will. Again, I have a moral philosophy. I have a code that I live by, and it's the non-aggression principle. Essentially, you boil it down in a nutshell as don't hurt people, don't steal their things. And, using force is hurting someone. Whether or not you're using a threat of force or not, it's still force. So, let's go back to the numbers here. All right, so we have Donald Trump with 736 delegates. Now, again, I mentioned before, I'm not going to take away any delegates from Donald Trump, even though I have already shown you guys that there are a few key races here where Donald Trump would not have received as many of the disproportional delegates that he would have if Rubio was not in the race. Okay, so all I'm going to do is take the delegates that Rubio got, and move them over to Cruz. That's all I'm going to do. So let's add this up. He had 7, 2, 7. Oh, this is going to be really interesting radio for you guys. 1, 5, plus 9, plus 16, plus 8, plus 12, plus 9, plus 3, plus 16, plus 6, plus 7, plus 5, plus 1, plus 10, plus 1, plus 6. Okay. That's a total of 148 delegates that have gone to Rubio, which, by the way, this is actually pretty funny. Kasich has 143 delegates, and he's currently in 4th place in the delegate count. Rubio has 148. So, very interesting here. So, let's go ahead and also add the, 6? That's 7. Let's add 7 from Carson. Just to be fair, just to play with the numbers here a little bit, let's add 7 to Donald Trump from Carson's stuff. Okay, so that will put him up to, let's see here, 743. So that would give him 743 delegates, Donald Trump, and that's not taking away. If you, it's not even factoring into the amount that the disproportional delegate doling out would change if Rubio wasn't in the race. We're just simply the delegates Rubio got. We're just giving them to Cruz and not factoring in the winner-take-all states or winner-take-most states. Okay, so at 463 delegates. If we were to add the 148 delegates that Rubio had, that'd put him at 611. We're talking much, much closer than it would have been. And this is not factoring in winner take all, winner take most. I argue that in some of these instances, Cruz would have won winner take all. So we're talking, dozens of additional delegates that could be won. Plus, the momentum is going to start swinging. All right, so that's that. That's the delegate math. I wanted to go through and break that down because I think it's particularly important. So now, let's go ahead and talk about this Ted Cruz sex scandal. All right, so Ted Cruz has been slandered, and I'm calling this a slander even though the way it was written was as if the National Enquirer knew that they were going to be sued for what they were saying. The article, in fact, to the chagrin of many Donald Trump supporters, does not actually say Ted Cruz was involved in an affair with these 5 alleged women. What it actually does say is that people are making these accusations. Some people are alleging that this has happened, and they're levying these outrageous, they actually use the word outrageous accusations, and then they started going into the accusations. So they prefaced it in a way that basically covered their butt, so that they'll say, well, look, we're not reporting that this is what's happening. We're reporting that people are alleging that it happened. And first of all, it should be noted that the only person that was sourced, that was named as a source from the article, is a campaign manager or a former campaign manager of Donald Trump. Okay, that's interesting how that works. But additionally, it should be noted that Donald Trump is great friends with, I believe the guy's name is David Pecker, if I'm remembering right. Yes, David Pecker. He's of the National Enquirer. He's the guy who owns the National Enquirer, the Star, Sun, Weekly World News, Globe Men's Fitness, Muscle and Fitness, Flex, Fit Pregnancy, and Shape. So this guy's a bigwig. All right, he's a billionaire. So like all billionaires, they're connected. Guess who David Pecker's connected with? Oh, he's really, really good friends with, you guessed it, Donald Trump. And, it's just kind of funny because, Donald Trump has expressed his love for David Pecker, and now there's a hashtag that's going around that says, hashtag Trump loves Pecker. So, pretty funny. Also, it should be noted, the hashtag Trump pays for Wiener is also going around, and it has to do, what it's pertaining to in particular is how Donald Trump has actually paid money to the campaigns of Anthony Weiner. You see how that works. Donald Trump paid for Anthony Weiner. So hashtag Trump pays for Weiner. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of interesting. But let's look at the actual the sex scandal. Again, all of this is alleged. One of the people that is alleged is actually Donald Trump's own people. One of his own people. It's like a spokeswoman. Her name is Katrina something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But I find it particularly interesting because it puts Donald Trump in this position of power to where he can actually, if he wanted to actually, because by the way, the spokesperson, Katrina, she said, no, this is not true. This is not true. That none of that happened. But it gives Donald Trump a bit of power, putting him in this position to where all he has to do is have this woman come out and say, yes, I lied about it before, but now I'm telling the truth. And it gives the Trump campaign a lot of ammunition against Cruz. And I do not put it past him. Again, this is the guy who has mafia ties. We've already talked about this before. This is the guy who was trying. He's not above dirty tricks. He's not above dirty tactics, okay? First of all, he's the guy who tried to use the coercive force of government to steal an old woman's home using eminent domain for private financial gain. We're not talking about building a hospital or a road or a school. He wanted to destroy her house against her will to build limousine parking lots. Okay, so it's not above Donald Trump to use his friends, the influence that he has to create controversy, and I think this is all just ginned up and it's artificial. I actually don't believe that Ted Cruz was involved in a sex scandal, but if he was, okay. If I saw some evidence that showed that, I'd believe it at that point. Give me some evidence. But the fact is, this article actually has zero evidence. It's just a bunch of accusations, and it's written in a way that they know that if they get sued, it won't hurt them because they won't be held liable anyway for slander. And one of the things that's crazy about election, especially attack ads or maliciously false ads, is that once the information's out there, the damage is already done. It doesn't matter if you actually lose a lawsuit afterwards. The information's already out there, and you've already made an impression on voters. So it's a little bit of a despicable tactic to use. And Donald Trump, he's saying that the things that he's been doing, especially if you've heard, this has been a pretty vicious news week here. Donald Trump released a picture of, it wasn't really a very flattering picture of Heidi Cruz, Ted Cruz's wife, next to his wife. I can't remember what his wife. She's a model or something, a Russian model, or I don't know. Anyway, and it says the meme says, a picture says 1,000 words. So basically, he's implying that Heidi Cruz is ugly. How is this candidate, Donald Trump, how is he going to win over the women voters? He's already got the most negatives of any candidate in history. We already know that the Bernie Sanders supporters aren't going to support him. Democrats aren't going to support him either because he's gone after the sacred cow of abortion, which we're gonna get into that conversation in a minute. But in addition, now this is a repeated behavior of calling women ugly. He's called Roseanne Barr a fat pig or cow or something along those lines, and he's called Carly Fiorina. He called her ugly. Tried to say it was her persona he was calling ugly, but she actually bit back, and it really hurt. She was one of the only people that actually have come out on top in a scuffle with Donald Trump, where she said, "Women heard what you said, and they know exactly what you meant." So, again, this is repeated behavior of calling women ugly. He's going to lose. Donald Trump is going to lose the largest voting bloc in America. It's like 54% of the population are women. no women are going to choose to vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton. I mean, very few, especially Democrats. He keeps saying he's going to expand the tent by bringing in these progressives, these liberals. We're going to expand the tent. And, yeah, we're alienating the conservative base and women and these Bernie Sanders supporters. But we're going to expand the tent and bring in Democrats, the blue-collar Democrats that people think don't exist anymore. Maybe they don't exist anymore. Again, I think that the Democratic Party has been moving further and further to the left. Now we have an avowed socialist running. So, anyway, let's go ahead. Oh, by the way, we have some activity on Twitter here. Ken says on Twitter, he says, I don't trust Trump as far as I can throw him. I still think he's a spoiler for Hillary, pulling the wool over the followers' eyes. And then Mark on Twitter says, hashtag Trump loves Pecker was started by the world's greatest author at Brad Thor. I actually know that, and I have a couple of his books on my shelf here. I'm really excited to read them, actually. But I heard his call out to Glenn Beck supporters. And you know what? I'll make the same call here. Don't hashtag Trump loves Pecker. Don't send that out there because, out of context, it could be taken a whole different way than what Donald Trump loves the man, David Pecker. All right. He loves him. Hashtag Trump loves Pecker could be taken out of context. The same with hashtag Trump pays for Wiener. So I guess what we'll say is that if you're going to text hashtag Trump loves Pecker or hashtag Trump pays for Wiener, then maybe you should put it in context or just don't do it at all. But thanks Mark for that. I appreciate that. And Brad Thor, I caught his segment on that. That was a pretty funny bit. So we got another tweet here. Ken says Trump was correct about Roseanne Barr. That's a nasty commie expletive, which I won't use. Look, I don't like her either, which is why I'm not quick to jump to her defense or anything here. But I'm just showing you there is a pattern of behavior. And we can't, again, one of the things that I'm getting from Donald Trump supporters is, how are you going to win these people over? How are you, Daylight Disinfected, Dan Sandini, the last episode of the show 2 weeks ago, he was telling me, well, look, how are you going to appeal to these people, these liberals? This is one of the arguments he said is, how are you going to appeal to the liberals? We have to get them to vote for us. No, we don't. I say no, we do not have to get liberals to vote for us. We have to convince them to no longer be liberals, because at least not in the classical sense, in the modern sense of how they describe themselves now, which is the antithesis of what the word meant originally. Again, liberal meant liberty, and now liberal means government involved in every facet of your life, and you have no decisions, and nothing is really a right. You don't, the stuff in the Constitution, not really. You don't, Bill of Rights, those really aren't rights. They're just suggestions, unless you hurt somebody's feelings, or someone feels threatened in some way, or you've invaded their safe space. Those kind of things. But again, I digress here. We're getting off into the weeds. So Donald Trump, how is he going to win with this pattern of behavior towards women? Again, you look at what happened with Megyn Kelly, and then we have to look at what happened with the Breitbart reporter. This woman was yanked back. All right, all right. First of all, there's been conversations about a atmosphere or systemic atmosphere in the Ted Cruz campaign with the so-called dirty tricks in Iowa, and I've covered the so-called dirty tricks, which were not dirty tricks at all. They were merely reported a CNN report, and CNN will not own up to their false reporting. So, but this shows an atmosphere of Donald Trump. First of all, the violence that happened at his rallies against the MoveOn.org communists over there. Again, I'm not on either one of their side. I think they're both at fault in the situation. The atmosphere of the Donald Trump campaign it's pretty disturbing. First of all, you've got his negativity towards women, his attacking of Megyn Kelly, basically trying to put her out of business, ruin her livelihood because she asked him an unfair question. Boo-hoo. All right, and then the way he's been with women throughout his life, not even just this campaign. But again, with the atmosphere of his campaign, his campaign manager putting hands on a woman, trying to jerk her to the ground, bruising her arm, lying about what happened to it, then an audio of what happened is released, then a video showing what she said is accurate. And Donald Trump, he stands by this guy. He said even if he's convicted, he's going to stand by him. He won't fire this guy. Donald Trump's not going to win the women vote. Newsflash. Not going to win the women vote. Most negatives of any presidential candidate in history. Most. So, not going to win it. Not going to win the Democrats. Not going to win the women. This is pretty important. This is kind of his big base here of what he's trying to say. He's trying to say he's going to win the Democrats. Not going to happen. He's definitely. Who would vote for Donald Trump if you're a Democrat? Who would vote for Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton? It's insane. It's insanity. Now, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton either, but let's actually move on here for a second here and talk about Donald Trump on abortion. This is something that has gotten him into a wee bit of hot water. Donald Trump was talking about women and how they should receive some form of punishment for getting abortions. Here's a clip.
Should the woman be punished for having an abortion?
Look.
This is not something you can dodge. If you say abortion is a crime or abortion is murder, you have to deal with it under the law. Should abortion be punished?
Well, people in certain parts of the Republican Party and conservative Republicans would say yes, they should be punished.
How about you?
I would say that it's a very serious problem, and it's a problem that we have to decide on. It's very hard.
But you're for banning it.
Are you going to say, well, wait, are you going to say put them in jail? Is that
well,
the
no, what I'm
punishment
asking you, because you say you want to ban it. What's that mean?
I am pro-life, yes.
What is ban? How do you ban abortion? How do you actually do it?
Well, you'll go back to a position like they had where people will perhaps go to illegal places.
Yeah.
But you have to ban it.
You ban it and they go to somebody who flunked out of medical school.
Are you Catholic?
Yes, I think
And how do you feel about the Catholic Church's position?
I accept the teaching authority of my church on moral issues.
But do you know their position on abortion?
Yes, I do.
And do you concur with that position?
Okay, so very first thing here, I just want to point out, there's two things going on here that I find kind of interesting. Number one, Donald Trump, he's trying to dodge the question. He doesn't want to answer. He does not want to answer because, first of all, he doesn't know. Donald Trump hasn't given any thought to this information whatsoever. He has no policy stance when it comes to abortion because he's actually not pro-life. He's very pro-choice, as he has made clear throughout his long life of talking about how much he's in favor of abortion, even up to and including partial birth abortions. He's been for that in the past. The only reason why he is saying he's pro-life now is because he's running as a Republican, and he has to. He thought that it would be enough for me to just say I'm pro-life. Again, he's never actually described a pivot point on this, and I think this is particularly important. No pivot point has been described by Donald Trump other than an unnamed person that he knows was considering aborting her baby, had the kid turned out to be a good kid, and that's why Donald Trump is now pro-life. I don't buy that. First of all, it's kind of important, and it's also important to note here that you can tell why Donald Trump is not pro-life, because he doesn't understand the point of pro-life. All right, he doesn't understand the argument behind pro-life. That, as pro-lifers are saying, that to kill a baby in the womb is murder. Okay? That's what they boil this down to, is that you're extinguishing a human life, and that should be illegal because the purpose of government is to protect life, liberty, and property. So there ought to be a law that restricts people from killing other people, even if they're in the womb. Again, this is what pro-lifers believe. I'm not necessarily saying that that's how I feel about it. Again, I'll get into my position on abortion in a moment here. But let's finish up with Donald Trump. But before we do, let's comment here. Again, he doesn't want to say what he actually believes in this thing because he has no viewpoint. He's never given a thought. He's trying to buy himself some time. So now he's diverting. First of all, he's dodging. Then he diverted. He tried to shift the conversation. Well, what do you think? You're a Catholic. What do you think about this? And this is another point that I think is particularly important to note here, is that I think this is, I think it's Chris Matthews. That's who it is. Okay, so Chris Matthews, he's saying, oh, well, I believe that their moral point here. Let's go back and hear what Chris Matthews is saying, because this is hilarious.
Moral issues.
But do you know their position on abortion?
Yes, I do.
And do you concur with that position?
I concur with their moral position, but legally, I get to the question. Here's my problem with it.
Okay, so first of all, he didn't answer. Chris Matthews did not. I believe with their moral position, but legally, well, here, let's change. So, first of all, legally, there is no law banning abortion right now. All right, so this is a hypothetical scenario that he's putting himself into, and again, if you're talking about protecting the life of an unborn human being, which is what pro-lifers are saying, that it's a life of an unborn human being, that to kill that human being is essentially murder. So here's Donald Trump rationing this out here.
No, but let me ask you, but what do you say about
It's not funny.
Your church? Yeah, it's really not a funny thing. What do you say about your church? They're very, very strong.
They're allowed to, but the churches make their moral judgments, but you running for president of the United States will be chief executive of the United States. Do you believe believe in punishment for abortion? Yes or no, as a principle?
The answer is that there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't
what?
know. That I don't know.
Okay, so Donald Trump believes that there should be. In this instance, he's sitting there thinking, you can see his face. You can see the wheels turning. He's like, I'm backed against the wall. I'm going to have to give an answer. He doesn't. First of all, Donald Trump does not know how to give a non-answer. He doesn't know how to change the conversation. Like, for example, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton will dodge and dodge and dodge, and she'll say, well, what I'll say is, and she'll give you, like, for example, when Jorge Ramos was backing her against the wall on whether or not she would deport illegal immigrants the first time, she dodged and she gave a non-answer. Second time, he pinned her against the wall and made sure she gave that answer. So Donald Trump first, okay, now remember, this is his position. Women should receive some form of punishment, all right? And if you noodle that out, if you're a pro-lifer, or you can at least understand the logic behind a pro-lifer's argument, that to kill a human being in the womb is murder. All right, so obviously, a woman, if you're pro-life, should face some form of punishment. Yeah, right? Well, Donald Trump has backpedaled on this position. Can you believe this? He actually had 3 positions in 3 hours on abortion. So after the first one, he let's see here. Trump spokesperson Hope Hicks sent a statement from Trump to reporters. This issue is unclear and should be put back into the states for determination. Like Ronald Reagan, I am pro-life with exceptions, which I have outlined numerous times. So more criticism continued to come. He thought, oh, well, let's go to the states issue. This would be a good way to just dump this into the states, and I don't have to actually answer or come up with any real policy positions on this or anything along those lines. I just say, okay, I'm pro-life and it's a state issue. But again, now he's backpedaled even further here. He releases in another explanation. This is a little bit before 5 p.m. that same day. He did a complete reversal on his position. He says, if Congress were to pass legislation making abortion illegal and the federal courts upheld this legislation, or any state were permitted to ban abortion under state and federal law, the doctor or any other person performing this illegal act upon a woman would be held legally responsible, not the woman, Trump said in a statement. Again, let's remind you here of what Trump just said just earlier in the day. Here we go.
That there has to be some form of punishment.
For the woman?
Yeah, there has to be some form.
10 cents, 10 years,
I don't know. That I don't.
So there has to be some form of punishment for the woman. So what can explain this amazing turnaround of policy? He says, no, not for the woman. It has to be for the doctor. And it just goes to show you that Donald Trump has no idea why a pro-lifer is against abortion. Because they believe that it is murder, that you're killing another human being. So it doesn't matter. For example, let's lay out a scenario where person A wants to kill person B. So person A hires a hitman, and that hitman kills person B, but gets caught in the process. Who do you think should be, prosecuted in this situation? Should it just be the person who actually did the killing? Should it be just the hitman? Or should it be person A and the hitman? In this instance, as we have now with law, if you hire a hitman, you're just as guilty, if not more so, than the hitman themselves, because you're the one that put them up to it. So it would make sense that, in a situation where abortion is illegal and you go ahead and do it anyway as a woman. Again, Donald Trump mentions at some point in this interview, they have to go to back alleys and do things illegal in a black market to get an abortion. Okay, well, look, we're against abortion because we believe, if you're pro-life, that it's killing some other human being. So, first of all, from a pro-life standpoint, again, I don't necessarily consider. I'm always pro-life in the terms that I don't want to see a human being die. But where I differ is where are we drawing the line at what life is, where life is, and I'll get into the minutia of my position in a second. But if you are concerned about stopping somebody from murdering a baby, an unborn baby, the person performing the abortion should be punished if it's illegal. If we're looking at that as murder, the person performing the abortion should obviously be sent to jail. I mean, you're committing a murder. So they should go to jail. And the person paying for them to commit the murder should go to jail as well. Now, in the history of our country, from what I understand, maybe I'm wrong. I think from the 1970s or something like that. I think I remember reading an article not too long ago. I can't remember where I got this now. But I don't think that anyone has actually gone to jail for having an abortion. Fact check that. Don't believe me on that one. But I seem to remember reading that somewhere this week. But anyway, I digress. Regardless, how is it wrong to send a woman to jail for murder if we believe that abortion is murder? I think just from a pro-life standpoint, it doesn't make sense not to support that position. I think it's not ideologically consistent. Now, where I stand on abortion, all right, I believe that the line of what we consider life is arbitrary. We've determined, again, if life does not begin at conception, all right, which we say it doesn't in our society, which is why we're allowing kids to be killed, little babies to be killed in the womb. If life doesn't begin at conception, where does it begin? Where is it? When the baby can come out of the womb? I think at a minimum it should be if the baby can come out of the womb and we can keep it alive on machines. And as technology advances, as we get more technologically advanced, that number is going to dwindle further and further down, earlier and earlier into the lifespan, into the pregnancy. So that just shows you that number is arbitrary. But I think at a very minimum, we should be erring on the side of life. I don't like the idea of us killing. I don't think anybody likes the idea of abortion. Even the Democrats, what they originally said was that it was supposed to be safe, legal, and rare. But we've got over 50 million babies that have been aborted. That's not very rare. It's not very rare at all. Look, I'm not for abortion. I don't like it. I don't think that it's something we should celebrate. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. But at the same time, I have to question at what point do the rights of the baby, of that human, the right to life, what point does that come into play? If it was up to Hillary Clinton, would it be the 9th month of the pregnancy? See, this is one thing about Donald Trump. What he should have done in this scenario, and this is something that I would have done. I would have taken a page out of Ted Cruz's book from this, because I think this is a great tactic. First of all, we've been waiting to hear from Hillary. Where do you draw the line? Where is it okay to stop aborting babies? Is it in the third trimester? Is it are partial birth abortions okay? 9 months, a 14-year-old kid, is it okay to abort that person? Where's the line? Because Hillary Clinton won't answer this question. If I was Donald Trump and if I was asked this question, I would have said, oh yeah, I would love to answer that question for you. Absolutely. Ask me that question. But ask me that question after you ask Hillary this question, and then I'll answer this for you. At what point is it not okay to abort a baby? And I wouldn't answer that question until Hillary answered that one, because you don't see the leftist media. You do not see these people backing Hillary into the corner. You don't see even mainstream media asking the tough questions like this to the Democrats. Yeah, they'll try to set up a gotcha moment for a Republican candidate, but Hillary's sliding under the radar, getting away with murder. She's, again, you would think she would be in every freaking news story because she's under FBI investigation, but no. They hold these debates at 1 a.m. in the morning, they try to hide their candidate. They don't want people, because the more people see Hillary Clinton, the less they like her. I'm #NeverHillary as well as #NeverTrump. So just an FYI, I won't be voting for either of them. But I digress. So let's go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I want to talk about the difference between Hillary and Trump on the economy and why I think Trump is actually worse. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages. And again, before we go, if you would like to join today's conversation, feel free to give us a call, 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mac Worley III.
All right, gang. Let's look at Trump versus Hillary on the economy. Hillary doesn't seem to be protectionist like Donald Trump is. Donald Trump's talking about tariffs, which, again, is a protectionist tool that has been proven to never work. As Reagan said, protectionism leads to destructionism, and we've seen time and time again that laying tariffs on goods coming into the country is a bad thing. And again, what could be bad about China devaluing their currency in order to sell goods to us cheap? Now, Donald Trump argues that, we're getting screwed over. We got bad deals from China not because of government or regulation or things like that. We're not able to compete against China because they're devaluing their currency. So in order to resolve this issue, he wants to levy a huge tax. That's what tariffs are. They're taxes. Anybody calling for tariffs are actually calling for huge increases in your taxes. Now keep in mind, the clothes you buy very likely come from Mexico or China. And the things that you spend your money on for clothes and stuff, that's going to dramatically go up, and as well as like goods from Walmart. If you buy a hard good from Walmart, something like a desk or a TV. By the way, Japan too. By the way, is one of the countries that he's talking about levying tariffs on. So if you buy any kind of technology, anything that was made in Japan, made in China, made in Mexico. By the way, you're going to be paying out the nose for Trump ties because they're made in China and Mexico. So keep that in mind. But if you're trying to get any of these things, this is going to decimate retail. You're going to see a massive amount of jobs lost because of I think in some cases he was talking about a 45% tariff on these goods. And again, I always like to go to the root of the issue. What this is saying is that these goods coming in from overseas are too cheap for us to compete against. So rather than making our goods more economical, we're going to engage in protectionism, start levying taxes on the people who want to buy them. So American citizens who want to buy these goods are going to have to pay more for them. Instead of bringing the prices of our goods down, we actually raise the price of everyone else who we can't compete against. That's what it is. So you're not actually making any extra money from this. You're getting screwed over. And again, this comes from a fundamental misunderstanding from Donald Trump. He doesn't understand that the reason why we can't compete in some of these areas. Now, granted, there's some areas that we don't want to compete in because like baby diapers, for example. China, they can make the baby diapers because there's not much money in it, and it's basically pennies on the dollar for Chinese diapers. So some of these things, Americans may not want to get involved manufacturing these things because it's just not any profit in it. I believe in specialization. A country is going to produce the goods that they're good at producing, and if you can't compete in the free market. Again, free market, it's free trade. If you're a Donald Trump supporter, and you claim to be a free trade supporter as well, I don't understand your logic behind this because he's actually calling for market manipulation. He's trying to manipulate the market, anti-free trade. He calls it fair trade. You should understand that progressives, they like to play with the words, all right? They like to hijack words like common sense. He calls himself a common sense conservative. He's a freaking progressive, and they like to change words and manipulate the language. So again, what he's going to do is put places like Walmart out of business because they won't be able to afford to actually purchase the goods from China. And even if they don't go out of business, which they will, they'll go out of business, and then all those Americans employed by Walmart and other retailers that are selling goods that come from Mexico, China, Japan, things along those lines, all those people will be going out. All those companies will be going out of business. All those people will be out of work, and the price for goods will be astronomically higher. So not only are you're hurt once because you lost your job, you're also hurt because all the prices for everything that you buy has dramatically increased. And we're still not producing anything here in America. We're not going to be suddenly, by increasing taxes on Chinese goods, it's not going to create American jobs. It's just not. It's because the reason why, and again, this comes from the fundamental misunderstanding from Donald Trump. He does not understand that the reason why we don't manufacture things in America anymore is because of all the regulation, all of the red tape, all of the things making it impossible for us to compete in the free market by the government. We have things like minimum wage. We got all these benefits that employers are required to give, Obamacare. All of these things, workers' compensation, all of these things are costs and expenditures for each employee that an employer wants to hire. So rather than trimming back the government regulation and making it easier for people to, first of all, engage in their right to contract, to decide what work they're willing to work for, at what pay. They can negotiate their own wage. They don't need the government doing it for them. And their benefits as well. So rather than doing that, and rather than allowing us to actually have a market level, a fair market level, you want to talk about fair trade. What can be more fair than getting the government out of the way and getting rid of these unfair market advantages that government creates through things like subsidies and kickbacks, all these. We're talking about crony corporatism. This is what we have in America. We have moved away from capitalism, free trade. We now have subsidized things just like ethanol. Ted Cruz went up against the ethanol subsidies and won, by the way. And what he was saying is he was going to get rid of subsidies across the board. Get rid of ethanol subsidies, yes. But first of all, he made a compromise on that to where he wouldn't do it all at once. He would, phase it out over a 5-year period. But he was going to get rid of all the oil subsidies. That way it was a fair playing field. That's fair trade. And what will work, again, if we're using specialization, if we get the government out of the way and give us a fair playing field with other countries around the world and stop making it so much more expensive to produce things here in America, if we do that, we're going to see the things that we're good at producing are the things that we will produce. The things that we're not so good at producing, we may produce, but maybe not a whole lot of it. We may have some marginal producers on that. And the things that we suck at producing, we're just not going to do, which is what we're doing right now. We suck at producing everything, which is why companies are leaving us. They're going overseas. We're outsourcing. All of these things. We don't suck because we're not good at doing it. We suck because we've got the government making it impossible for us to negotiate our wages, our benefits, and we're getting all this fluff that some of us may not even necessarily want. Like, for example, in Obamacare, the Little Sisters of the Poor. This is a perfect example of the fluff I was just talking about. Little Sisters of the Poor, it's an organization of nuns. These are old nuns. They're old ladies, all right? They're not spring chickens. Let's just put that out there. And Obamacare wanted to make them, all right, provide contraception to first of all, geriatric women, all right? These are older women. And more importantly, nuns. They have taken a vow of celibacy. All right? They don't have sex. So they don't need contraception, but yet they are being sued by the federal government because they don't want to. They feel like, first of all, they don't need it, but second of all, they have a moral obligation against doing that. They feel like it's against their religion to provide contraception, so they don't want to do it. So the federal government, they change their mind. So now, again, this is the part of the red tape. This is just one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why it's impossible to produce like other countries do, because we just have too much government. But Donald Trump doesn't seem to get that. So let's look at Hillary Clinton versus Donald on this. I think Hillary Clinton's going to do a lot more of the same when we're talking about the economy. Hillary Clinton's going to continue to pretty much have the same policies that Obama has on the economy. Donald Trump, I think, will destroy, literally decimate our economy. Now, we're already talking about a financial collapse, and I think it's very well possible that the collapse is going to happen no matter who's in office. But I think that we're worse off in terms of the economy with Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton. Now, I'm not voting for her. I will never, ever vote for either one of these two. I'm voting with my conscience. If I can't vote for Ted Cruz, then I will vote for a Libertarian Party candidate if there's a good one running that I like. I like Gary Johnson. I've looked into Austin Peterson a little bit. He seems pretty cool. Seem to like him too. But I want to go back here for a moment here. I was talking about how we have good ideas in the Conservative Party, and this is something that it's a big takeaway I took from 2 weeks ago when I was talking with Dan. I've talked about this conversation a lot this show, but I think it's important here that we talk about this, because one of the things that Dan said is that we need to win over these liberals, and I've mentioned this a couple times. We need to win over liberals, get them to vote for our candidate. And I fundamentally disagree with this point. I think that we don't have to make ourselves more palatable to liberals. We have to explain to them. We need to explain to progressives, explain to socialists and communists, their ideas don't work. And there is a plethora of history to back up every instance where communism took root. It turned out really badly. authoritarian regimes, governments based on Marxism, have killed over 100 million people the last century. 100 million. All right? These are terrible ideas. Yet we have to keep having the same conversation, and we get diverted. We get diverted on the small picture of talking about pro-life, talking about pro-gun, talking about this or that or that. The ultimate issue here is the ideas. The ideas that we need to explain that the authoritarian regimes, that the regimes that people want to make equality, actually ultimately end up making people's lives worse. And they have to have the control mechanisms that these people don't like to begin with in order to have them. In order to get this form of government, in order to get the kind of equality that they want, they have to do things that many socialists or communists would find objectionable. So I want to ask sincerely to the GOP, to Donald Trump supporters, to anyone that says that we need to put up a progressive candidate for the Republican Party in order to get them elected, I want to ask this serious question. How do we expect conservative ideas and our principles? Again, we know that our ideas are the best ideas. History has already proven this to be true. If you look at throughout the long list of history here, since capitalism was invented, since this form of this economic form of government has been created, people have been lifted out of poverty like never before. The amount of people that were serfs and in object poverty, these people, that amount has dramatically decreased. I think the last time, if I'm remembering right, I think it was around 9% of people in the world are considered in poverty. 9%. That number was, 40, 60% or something along those lines before capitalism. Capitalism has risen more people out of poverty than anything else in this world. And if we look at places that have the most socialist or communist or Marxist societies, they have the most poverty. And in addition, the threat of government killing them, obviously. But again, back to the question, how do we expect our conservative ideas and our principles, which we know to be the best, we have, as Donald Trump says, we got the best words. How do you expect our ideas to prevail if we never give people, the voters, a chance to pick them? We keep putting up these lukewarm candidates, people that are, we think, they'll be more electable. We got John McCain, Mitt Romney. We're talking about Donald Trump, who, again, if we're talking about electability, he's the most negatives. He's got more negatives than any other candidate in history. He's not going to win the women vote. He's certainly not going to win Bernie Sanders supporters. That's ridiculous. He's not going to win women voting over Hillary Clinton? No, it's just not going to happen. He's not going to win the conservatives, by the way, because we understand. We see what you are, Donald Trump. We know you. We've had a chance to get to know you. And we know that you're a stinking progressive. We're not going to vote for progressives anymore. So how are we going to win if we never nominate candidates that are true conservatives? Again, it seems to me that the more and more that we're ashamed of our own ideas. I don't understand this. This is a self-shaming that I don't seem to get. If you are a conservative and you believe in small government, the three reasons why government was created was to protect life, liberty, and property. If this is what you believe, why are you ashamed of putting up a candidate that actually believes the same thing that you do? How do you expect your ideas? Again, we've been losing. Progressivism has been rotting away at our culture for over 100 years now. How are we going to win if we don't ever present our ideas to people? If we keep watering down our ideas, or just outright putting someone up that doesn't even believe in our ideas anymore. If we keep moving further and further to the left, what's the difference? What makes us different? If we're not actually going to stand up for the conservative principles that we claim to believe in, then what are we doing here? I don't know. And this is a genuine question, because how can we win? How can the conservative movement ever win hearts and minds of people if we don't ever put the option on the ballot for them to vote? We keep disenfranchising voters. And I want to, this clip is, I think, the most important that I have heard from Ronald Reagan. He talks about no pale pastels. And he's talking about putting up bold colors. And I think this ties in very well. We're going to go ahead and play the clip. Here we go.
You know, in spite of all our greatness, our people feel a sense once again, or a desire to feel a sense of greatness. A sense and a pride in their own capacity for performing great needs. We Republicans, I think, can do something about this, but not if we try to be all things to all people. There are some in our midst who've suggested that we should broaden our base, except that what they mean by broadening our base is to blur the image, to make us indistinguishable from the other party.
Now, let me say that this is exactly what Donald Trump is saying. We're going to bring more Democrats in. We're going to expand the tent. If we start blurring these lines between what we stand for and our opposition, what is the difference? You can, as he said, as Ronald Reagan said, you make us indistinguishable from the other party. And what I've been saying for the longest time here is that we are going to ostracize, by nominating Donald Trump or other progressives like him, John Kasich. Again, I'm never Kasich as well. For anyone out there saying, Mac, why don't you talk about these other guys? All you do is bash on Donald Trump. Look, I have said time and time again, the only candidate that I could even see myself voting for, out of everyone that was running, out of all 32,000 Republican candidates, I could only ever see myself even remotely voting for, I'll take a step back here, Ted Cruz and Rand Paul. Now, I have my beef with Rand Paul. I don't like that he's made deals with the establishment. He endorsed Mitch McConnell. That put a sour taste in my mouth. But I'll tell you what, if my choices were Hillary Clinton or Rand Paul, I would love to vote for Rand Paul. But out of everybody who was running, I could only vote for Rand Paul or Ted Cruz because of my ideology. Because of what I believe in the Constitution. So help me, I believe in the Constitution. Seems like it's a rare quality that we have politicians that actually support and defend the Constitution. And original intent, I think, is important as well. What were our founders thinking? So, back to Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's talking about how you blur the lines, you make the two parties indistinguishable, and you're going to ostracize people, and they're going to stay home. I've argued that is exactly what will happen if Donald Trump is nominated, and Hillary Clinton will win by a landslide. It will be, maybe she won't, but I know she'll win. She's going to win. Maybe she won't win by a landslide because she's such a terrible candidate. Nobody's excited to vote for Hillary Clinton, but Donald Trump is so negative. He's so negative, ostracizes his own party. 65% of his own party won't vote for him, allegedly. Let's just say out of that, I've been saying half of that, let's go with 30% of the conservative base won't vote for him at all. Then women are overwhelmingly going to vote for Hillary Clinton. And Democrats are going to vote for Hillary Clinton. There's no way he's going to expand the tent and bring in these Democrats who hate him, who are avowed socialists and who hate billionaires. No way. No way. So here's Ronald Reagan again.
Suggested that we should broaden our base, except that what they mean by broadening our base is to blur the image, to make us indistinguishable from the other party. Some have suggested that the 1974 election, the disastrous results, were an indictment of what we stand for. Well, may I suggest that the meaning of the last election will not be found among those who voted. It will be found among polling those who stayed home.
Okay, now this is a good point, and let's relate that to today. What can we learn from our last two elections where we had McCain and we had Romney? None of them were any good. All right, they were progressive candidates. They were lukewarm in ideology. Again, this is why we're losing. We're ostracizing the people in our own party. We're not putting up our bold colors that we claim to believe in, our ideas. We're not even putting up our ideas to the voter. We're not letting them decide what ideas are better. Instead, we're like, oh, well, you know what? Our ideas make some people feel uncomfortable or aren't going to make us win this election. It's not very electable. But so as a result, what we're going to do is we're going to water them down. So what did we learn from the last two elections? People stayed home. People were not excited to vote for McCain or Romney. They were not good candidates. They were progressives, and they alienated the base. Interesting. Ronald Reagan continues.
The biggest non-voter bloc in our nation's history. And why did they stay home? Well, because they said they couldn't see any difference between the two parties. I think they're basically wrong, but I think this is also an indication of what our answer should be to those who would make us more like the opponents. I am a convert to Republicanism. I spent most of my adult life as a Democrat, and I can testify that when I found I could no longer follow the leadership of the Democratic Party, I became a Republican not because the parties were the same, but precisely because they were different. More than half of those who didn't vote have been polled and say it no longer makes any difference which party wins. Now some have taken another course. There are some among us, and I respect their views, who suggest that that means an end to the Republican Party, that we should form a new third party. May I suggest an alternative to that? Let's have a new first party, a Republican Party, raising a banner of bold colors, no pale pastels, a banner instantly recognizable as standing for certain values which will not be compromised. Yes, we must broaden our base, but let's broaden it the way we did in 1972, because those Americans, Democrats and Independents and Republicans, are still out there looking for a banner around which to rally. And we have what they want, what they're seeking, but they don't know that. And sometimes I wonder if we know it.
So that was Ronald Reagan. And I really do. I feel like this message, it resonates today. We have people, we have a base who are rallying, wanting to hear conservative ideas, wanting to see a conservative candidate. You know, Reagan said people were staying home because they didn't think it made a difference anymore who won. They couldn't tell a difference between the party. And let me ask you, Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. Are you excited? Can you tell the difference? Does it really matter who wins in that situation? I don't think it does. Now, again, I'm not voting for Hillary. I'm not voting for Trump. But I think Reagan would agree in this situation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm putting words into his mouth here. But I think if Reagan was alive today, Reagan would be rooting for Ted Cruz. Because he does represent this bold color. He's putting up his conservative banner and hoping that people will flock to him. Now, I've already said where I stand concerning voting for a third party. If it's Trump or Hillary, I'll be voting for a third party, or I'll be staying home. Again, even as Reagan, I feel like there's so much that relates to what Reagan was happening, what was going on with Reagan at that time, because Reagan said he didn't leave the Democrat Party, they left him. And I'm starting to feel that way with the Republican Party here. If this is their guy, if Donald Trump is their guy, I can't go with you there, gang. If you're going with Donald Trump, you're leaving me behind. Now, I don't want to see the end of the GOP. I really don't. I mean, I hate the GOP establishment. There's a lot of reasons why I don't like the GOP, but it is the party of small government, or at least that's what it purported to be. That's what it was supposed to be. But if it's leaving those principles behind, then it's leaving me behind. And I think that there's many people out there that feel the same way. You know, the GOP is leaving us behind. And if that's where they go, I can't follow them. So I'll have no choice but to go the third party route. You know, I understand where Reagan was coming from. You know, why don't we have a new first party? And I agree. This is our chance with Ted Cruz right now. I'm not into hero worshiping. I'm not making this guy into a monument for us to worship. No. And again, the moment that I see him standing for something that he can't explain using the Constitution as a position, the moment I see that is the moment he loses my support. That's all it will take. And I'll tell you, his position on the iPhone, for the San Bernardino terrorist iPhone, where the FBI says the FBI wanted to force Apple to unlock this phone. His position on that was pretty damn close to making me lose my support. But he was able to back it up using the Constitution. I disagree with his interpretation, but at least he was backing it up with the Constitution. Like I said, pretty damn close to losing my support in that situation. But if we're gonna make this a new first party, we have to raise these banners. We have to stand for something bold and different and make ourselves distinguishable. Instead of giving progressive and progressive light, let's go progressive and conservative. Let's give a real difference. Let's make this election matter. And if the Republican Party decides to nominate a progressive this year, then that'll be that. That'll be that for the GOP. Let's war game this out a little bit here. I honestly believe that if Donald Trump gets the nomination, that's it for the GOP. That's it. The GOP will be dead if Donald Trump gets a nomination. And let me explain why. Even if he wins, more importantly, if he wins, the amount of devastation that he's going to do to the economy using these protectionist policies that have been proven to not work time and time again, they're going to destroy the economy. And the people that are going to be saddled with that blame is going to be Donald Trump. Donald Trump is also, as we've discussed in previous episodes, a strongman. So as the momentum behind anti-Trump movement builds, there's going to be rallies against him. There's going to be a lot of protests. And what you're going to see is these Bernie Sanders supporters, they're all going to be trying to protest against Trump. And then anything we do in Syria, the anti-war movement is going to come back, and you're going to see nothing but body counts on the news. You're going to hear about everything that we're doing around the world. Again, Code Pink is going to come out of the woodwork all of a sudden, because again, the anti-war movement goes away as soon as we have a Democrat in office. Interesting. It's very interesting that happens. But yeah, it will be back. All of these things that they have painted Republicans to be in the past, Donald Trump is the cookie cutter stereotype of what we're portrayed to be. Even though we're not jerks. We don't not care about people. What we believe is that our ideas actually make people better off. It actually lets people make their own life, earn their own success, instead of getting a handout from the government and being stuck in a position where you can't do anything for yourself and you're reliant on somebody else. This is what our idea is. We're not cruel and inhumane. We don't think that they'll portray that because we want to send women to jail for committing abortion if it's illegal. All right, if you're pro-life, and as we covered that earlier, if you're a pro-life person and you think that it should be banned, then obviously a woman should go to jail for doing that because you believe it's murder. So if that's what we as a society deem, then yeah, you would punish a woman, and that will be demonized. All right? So again, all of these things that will happen underneath Donald Trump, the momentum against the Republican Party, the backlash against the Republican Party, it will build and build and build. And again, we say that the pendulum has swung to the right with Donald Trump. That's what I believe is going on right now within the GOP, but I don't think it's happening, within the country nationally. I don't think nationally the pendulum is swinging right. At least not as hard as what I thought it would. After 8 years of Obama, I expected this pendulum to swing pretty hard, but I think it's only swinging within the Republican Party on the Trump side. Now, granted, I mean, I want Ted Cruz to win, so I guess the pendulum's swinging there as well. But I digress. So you'll get Donald Trump in the office. He'll do all these things. He'll destroy the economy. He's already talking about the war effort in Syria. These are things that he supports us getting involved in Syria, sending 20 to 30,000 U.S. military personnel to Syria. I don't want that. I completely disagree with that tactic to fight terrorism. And in fact, before we close out the show, I'll go into what I think we should be doing with terrorism. Or at least to thwart terrorism around the world. My answers, my solutions. Everybody's got an opinion. I'll give you mine. But the backlash after a Donald Trump presidency, I think, is going to be tremendous. It's going to be incredible at how far this pendulum is going to swing to the left, and Republican Party is going to get stuck with this label of this is what a Republican is, and we're going to lose the next election. I think if Donald Trump wins, he doesn't even win a re-election if he even runs. There's some allegations going about that Donald Trump didn't even expect or want to win this nomination, that he was simply doing it as a spoiler, as I've been saying, and that he just wanted to get a little bit of free press from it, and he's surprised. He was actually blindsided. I always mess that word up for some reason. He was actually blindsided by the amount of support he's gotten. He was surprised. So now he's like, wow, I really got a real shot at this. So I just do not see things going well for us as a nation with Donald Trump's authoritarianism, his lack of respect for the Constitution. Again, it may feel good as a Donald Trump supporter to think, okay, well, Donald Trump's going to target the left. He's going to go after these guys. Yeah, he may, violate their rights, things along those lines, but, at least it's not us. It's not happening to us. At least it's them. It's our turn to screw them over. That's the wrong way to look at it. That is absolutely the wrong way to look at it. The teams here, for those that are uninitiated, the teams that we have are the government versus the people. Again, I mentioned earlier, we are second-class citizens now. And here's a great example of how we are second-class citizens. The FBI has said that there's a higher burden of proof to levy charges against a presidential candidate. Just a presidential candidate. Hillary Clinton, this is who we're talking about, by the way. She's under FBI investigation for the email scandal. The one where she's been sending and receiving classified information, and she said, I didn't send any classified material, block. And it's just not true. It's come out to be not true. But anyway, there's a higher burden of proof to actually go after government officials, which means their standards are lower. We have a higher standard than our servants, our public servants. Again, to be a servant, you have to be subservient, which means you have less rights or you have less privilege, or you are a second-class citizen. If this is the idea here, gang, all right? Our government officials should have less rights. They should be second-class citizens. They should have a higher burden of proof. A higher standard that they should be held to. Because we're giving them power. This is the idea. It's the government versus the people. And that's why the Constitution was put there, to make sure that the government didn't get too much power. We have to go back to the first principles here, gang, of trying to prevent government from getting too much power. It doesn't matter if it's our guy in power or not. The next guy getting power may not be somebody who we like. Maybe somebody who then uses that power against us. The power is the problem. We got to restrict the power. We got to continue to work towards a more constitutional republic, something that our founders had intended. They expected us to continue to fight. They thought that we had to. Again, Ben Franklin at the convention, the Constitutional Convention, said, when asked what kind of government did you make us, he said, a republic if you can keep it, implying that we have to continue to protect ourselves from the government, to thwart the government from expanding and more heads on the Hydra from sprouting out. So let's do a little pivot here, subject change for the last little bit of the show here. I know I got some stuff here that I said I was going to get to. All right, let's quickly just get into some of these featured topics here. Why shouldn't you get involved in the pro-Trump or anti-Trump movement? Well, first of all, on pro-Trump, there's a lot of violence going on right now on that side. And I think it's created from the atmosphere of Trump saying that he's going to pay for people's legal fees. He's throwing people out. He's encouraging the audience to throw out protesters. There's been situations where protesters are punching out Donald Trump supporters are punching out protesters. There's been Donald Trump supporters spitting in their faces. Now, granted, both sides are wrong because the left is trying to silence Donald Trump. They're trying to scream him down. And I disagree with that completely. But the Donald Trump supporters are fighting back, which is not what we need to do here. This is the this is the difference, and I've been saying this for a while. This is the difference between Martin Luther King's philosophy and Malcolm X's philosophy. We have to rise above. We can't go the low road. They're baiting us. They're trying to get us to go the low road. They want us to react the way Donald Trump supporters are reacting now, with violence. And Donald Trump's not speaking out against it. He's not condemning it. He's saying, well, I can understand, I guess that guy, he flipped somebody off, and yeah, I mean, he deserved to get hit. Those are the kind of things. He's not speaking out against it. There's been a lot of talk about Donald Trump being a fascist and a nationalist, and look, we only got 9 minutes left in the program, so I don't have time to get into what these things are, but Hitler was a fascist and a nationalist. So these things are not. You may think about socialism being on the left, and it is on the left. Fascism is on the right. It's an authoritarian doctrine, but it's founded. It's based in Marxism, which is collectivism, and that is something that I don't think it's going to turn into it. I think it has the potential to. Donald Trump support, the Donald Trump movement, I think it has the potential to turn into nationalism or fascism. I don't think it's quite there yet, but I warn you, don't get caught up in these pro-Trump movements. And on the other side of the aisle, I'm anti-Trump. I don't like Trump. Not necessarily as a person. I mean, I don't think he's probably a great guy, but I don't like him as a candidate. I don't like him as a politician. I don't like him on the views that he has. I disagree with those views. So, but that doesn't mean that I support the anti-Trump movements, because again, the tactics that they're using are trying to shut down his speech, and these are full of the Bernie Sanders, socialist, communist, Marxist, Black Lives Matter, the people that I can't stand beside. All right. I can stand with you on principle if we disagree on some issues. I can stand in support, but I can't stand with these people because there's so much that we disagree on. I won't get caught up in these movements. I won't get mixed up with the likes of these people because I think that they're dangerous, and the views that they represent are views that I wholeheartedly, these are core issues to me, disagree with. So I warn you, avoid both the anti and pro-Trump movements. So before we actually get into where I think we should be on terrorism as far as trying to prevent terrorism, let's talk for a second about this 25,000 signature petition that is trying to allow firearms to the Republican National Convention. Some people are saying, "Oh, what could go wrong?" So it's kind of funny because I can see their viewpoint on that, especially with all the animosity on both sides. However, I think people have a right to be armed. And this is one of the funniest things in our society. It blows me away. I was thinking about it just at the basic principle. You only have one life. You've only got the one life to live, and if somebody kills you, that's it. That's all she wrote. That's it. So how is it even possible that somebody else, somebody other than you, can dictate whether or not you can be armed to defend yourself? That's it. I don't care what society you're in or what social contract theory that you supposedly signed, because you've only got the one life. If you want to protect yourself, you have every right to defend yourself. And I think that the Republican National Convention, again, we're talking about our principles, setting bold colors. If the Republican National Convention wanted to show that they stood by the principles that they claim to purport, here would be a great opportunity to show it. Now, I do think that there is a potential for violence at this national convention within our own party, because there's a lot of conflict about this contested or brokered convention. There may be riots within our own party. I imagine that there could potentially be a rift within the GOP, and we could see the end of the GOP at the convention. But in addition to that, I suspect that we're going to see a major protest if Donald Trump looks like he's going to get the nomination from these Bernie Sanders, MoveOn.org, crazy, foaming at the mouth, leftist, socialist, Marxist. This is what I expect. So let's move on here. I got 5 more minutes in the program. What do I think we should do on terrorism? Because Donald Trump thinks we should send men and women overseas to fight. Personally, I think that we should take a less interventionist approach. I think that if we got together with our allies and said, "Hey, gang, we're going to stop people from leaving Syria. We're going to send back all these immigrants, get them out of our country, send them back into Syria, because again, it's their country." I think we should isolate that country, Syria, and have them actually fight for their own country, because you're responsible. I've said this before. You're responsible for your own government. All right. Now, I'm not saying we try to isolate every country. We're isolationist, and we don't poke our nose out into the community. No, we have strong relationships with friends. We try to stem the flow of these refugees, send them back into their country. The only way that this country is ever going to become stable is if people actually stand up against the terrorists inside their own community. If they're not with them, they need to understand that they're either going to be subject to their rule or they need to stand up against them. So I'm not necessarily saying that we pick sides in that matter, but I definitely think as far as Kurdistan is concerned, I don't have any problem, because there's no way you're going to convince the Kurdistan people the Kurds to give up their territory. I don't think that I have any issue with them being armed by America. But I don't think that we should be trying to topple Assad. That's just going to create more of a power vacuum. I don't think we're going to have time to get through all this. I got so much to say on this too. But basically, we control the country, the immigration the refugee flow. Have them duke it out themselves. They're going to have to work it out within their own country, fight for their own country. And in the meantime, we control our immigration. We prevent people that are coming from potentially hostile areas from coming into this country. As I've said, we use selective immigration practices in the past. You can listen to previous episodes of the program to hear me talk about that. But also, One of the most important things that we have here is the right to bear arms. If terrorists want to come over here and try to blow themselves up, okay, we need to have a conversation with the American people. If I was a president, I would say, America, people are going to try to come over here and kill you. And they want us to go over there and get bogged down in a war. They want us to spend trillions of dollars and run our resources into the ground and collapse in what is called the graveyard of empires known as the Middle East. We don't want to get involved in that. Let's isolate them. And if they want to come over here and bring a fight to us, so help them, we're ready. And I would make it clear that I would do everything in my power to overturn any kind of gun laws restricting people's right to keep and bear arms, and let the people protect themselves, because you only have one life. It's up to you to defend yourself, and the government's not going to do it for you. They're going to do it the bare minimum that they have to. And number one reason here why they're not going to protect you is because the more you're afraid, the more power you give to them. So I'm not for us being involved in Syria, but I do realize that we have a role to play when it comes to counterterrorism. But I digress. We're running out of time here. I'd like to do another episode on this topic in the future. But anyway, we got to cut out of here. Don't forget to check us out every week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at OnTheMoveShow.com. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Follow us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, oh, by the way, before I do my outro here, thanks, MacPack. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate you tuning in week after week. You're the tip of the spear. So thank you so much. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, get on the move.